Hello, and welcome to the Snoozy Scientist. Wherever you are in the world, I'm so glad you found your way here. This little pocket of space was made specially for you, a calm place to drift towards rest while still letting curiosity wander. Tonight, we're traveling tens of thousands of years into the past to a Europe that would feel almost impossible to recognize. A Europe ruled not by kingdoms, cities, or people, but by predators so large and powerful that the modern continent feels strangely empty without them. Standing on these ancient plains were the giants, cats larger than any lion alive today, moving through the snow with a quiet confidence that came from ruling an entire continent. Their skulls were broad, their limbs built for toppling enormous prey, and their gaze followed everything that dared to cross their frozen world. These were the cave lions, the great hunters of the Ice Age. Long before castles rose, long before stories were written, these animals shaped the lives of the humans who shared their world. This was Europe before farms, before metal, before civilization, a land of cold winds, endless grasslands, mammoths on the horizon, and humans who kindled fire not for comfort, but for survival. Here, giant predators moved across thousands of miles, thriving through deep winters, sudden warm spells, and violent changes in climate. Scientists have traced their story through bones, DNA fragments, ancient footprints, and the artwork left on cave walls by people who watched them close enough to draw every detail. Huge heads, long limbs, no manes, strength enough to bring down creatures weighing several tons. And then, one day, they were gone. Their world faded. Their bodies disappeared into the soil and ice, and Europe grew quiet in a way it has never been since. But who were these giants, truly? What kind of Europe allowed predators this immense to rise and dominate? How did early humans live alongside hunters that powerful? And why did these creatures vanish so completely that many people today do not even know they once ruled this land? Tonight, we will follow the evidence they left behind, from frozen remains to claw marks, from ancient DNA to the stories etched in stone by those who saw them, a path leading through cold plains, dark caves, and the forgotten heart of a continent shared by humans and giants. But before we begin, I would love to know where in the world you are listening from tonight and what time it is there. Your comments always remind me how close we all are when curiosity brings us together. If this gentle space already feels comforting, it would mean so much if you tapped like or subscribed. And for those who have been here night after night, thank you for being part of this quiet little world of science. Now take a slow breath, let your shoulders relax, and together let us step into the lost age when giant lions ruled ancient Europe. If we could step gently across the threshold of time and let the world around us change, the Europe of today would slowly dissolve. The cities would fade into the ground, roads would unravel into dust. The neat borders and fields would soften into something vast and unsettled. The planet would tilt into a colder age, and the familiar landscape would be replaced by a continent that carried a different rhythm of life. The air would feel sharper. Winds would sweep across plains that stretched farther than the eye could travel. Ice lay heavy in the north, a colossal sheet of frozen water that reached deep into the heart of Europe. This was the Pleistocene, a chapter lasting hundreds of thousands of years, and the land held the memory of cold in its soil and rock. Here the world was shaped first by climate, not by seasons as we know them today, but by long, powerful cycles that moved like breath. For tens of thousands of years, the earth would cool, the ice creeping southward across the land. Then a warmer period would begin again, slow and tentative, and the ice would shrink back. These pulses of climate were driven by the tilt of the earth and the subtle shifts in its orbit. The continent felt each change as a living thing. During the coldest moments, Europe was a place of open grasslands and windswept steppes. The ground held short, hardy plants that clung to the soil. Scattered forests pressed against the edges of the plains, never quite claiming the land. Birch and willow trees grew low to the earth, their branches bending under frost and storm. Rivers cut through this frozen world, crystal and calm in the moments of stillness, then roaring with meltwater when the climate shifted again. It was not a lifeless world, quite the opposite. The plains supported herds of great animals that moved like tide and current. They crossed these frozen fields in long lines, following the grass that bent under their hooves. Mammoths traveled slowly, high above the ground on enormous pillars of bone and muscle. Their fur caught the frost and held it like glittering powder. Bison gathered in dark shapes along the horizon. Wild horses moved in clusters, their coats thickened against winter. Life was larger here. The cold demanded strength, the wind demanded endurance. Animals that survived carried heavy bodies and powerful limbs. They needed energy to walk across miles of open land and to face predators that watched from the edges of forests and valleys. This was a world that favored size. The cold turned growth into a shield. The wide open plains offered endless grazing. Every creature had space to move and space to hide. In this Ice Age world, the balance between life and climate was delicate. A slight shift in temperature could turn grasslands into tundra or invite forests to return. When the climate warmed even a little, trees began to spread across the plains, first in small patches, then in great green swaths. Warm periods did not last forever, and each advance of the forest was temporary. Yet every change altered how animals lived and moved. Migration routes twisted with the shifting edge of the trees. New plants filled the ground where the grass once grew. The Europe we know today is shaped by forests, rivers, and mountains. It feels established and calm. Its landscapes are stable, its climate predictable enough for human memory to hold. But during the Pleistocene, the land was always in motion. Ice pressed, forest retreated, grasslands unfurled across the continent like a quilt of pale gold. Everything was the result of a world ruled by cycles far longer than a single lifetime. This ancient land did not look like the Europe we imagine on modern maps. Spain was not a warm place where sunlight settled softly on fields. Britain was not an island, but a connected part of the mainland during the coldest periods. Seas rose and fell with the changing climate. Shorelines moved, valleys filled and emptied. Mountains watched over everything, but even they felt the scrape and weight of glaciers. The difference between past and present is not just the scenery. It is the presence of the great animals that once defined these plains, creatures that could outrun storms and withstand winters that lasted years. Herds moved like rivers of muscle and fur, their hooves shaping the earth. These animals thrived because the land held enough space and food for giants. The grasses grew in endless waves, rich in nutrients that fed massive bodies. The cold kept insects low and spread predators thin. The wide open world offered room for survival by movement alone. In this landscape, every animal depended on the vastness of the plains and the slow beat of the climate. The earth could hold life on a scale we rarely see now. The balance between cold and warmth, between ice and grass, created a world that was both harsh and generous. When we picture Europe today, we imagine dense forests and settled fields. We see villages perched near rivers and farmland cut into neat patterns. The Ice Age continent was different. It was raw and young. The ground was restless beneath the weight of ice and wind. The world felt wider and wilder, and the horizon seemed to stretch beyond imagination. This was the land where giant predators rose, a continent shaped by cold, a place where the climate carved the future of every animal that dared to walk across its frozen heart. The ancient plains were not empty. Moving across that wide and shifting landscape was a predator shaped by ice, space, and time. Quietly, its presence settles into the story. This was Panthera spelaea, the cave lion of Europe and Asia, an animal that belonged to the same family as modern lions but carried its own long and complicated history. The name Panthera speaks of a lineage that reaches deep into the family tree of big cats. Tigers, jaguars, and African lions all share this ancestry. Spelaea adds a reminder of where their remains are often found. Caves held the bones of the past like hidden archives, preserving claws, skulls, and frozen fur. Scientists did not imagine this animal from fragments alone. They traced its story through fossils, ancient DNA, and the shapes that nature left in stone. Panthera spelaea did not look like the lions we think of today. Its skull was wide across the top, the cheekbones spread to support powerful jaw muscles. The teeth were large and shaped for bone and meat. These details are more than anatomy. They are clues to how this animal lived. The cave lion needed strength to face the giants of the Ice Age. Its body grew to match the world around it. For anyone familiar with African lions, the size of Panthera spelaea can feel surprising. The cave lion stood taller at the shoulder, and its body stretched longer across the earth. Some fossils reveal individuals heavier than any modern lion. This was an animal that needed weight to survive. The cold demanded it, the prey demanded it, the distances demanded it. The difference in size was not simply a matter of being slightly larger, it was a true adaptation to the Pleistocene world. The deeper cold allowed large bodies to hold warmth more efficiently. Energy was precious in long winters. A heavier animal could store more muscle and fat. The cave lion grew into that shape naturally, molded by wind and frost. The fur of Panthera spelaea reflected the climate as well. Many cave paintings show these animals without the distinctive mane that surrounds the neck of African males. Scientists believe the cave lion carried less hair around the head. A thick mane would have trapped snow and ice, adding weight and losing heat. The cold sculpted a different silhouette. A smooth head, a strong neck, a coat better suited for deep winters and long hunts. Some findings suggest that the fur may have been dense and pale, perhaps blending into snowy grasslands and frozen ground. The colors shifted with the seasons, the same way the landscape changed with every passing century. Fossils found in ice and caves still hold microscopic traces of this coat, small clues preserved by time. The cave lion's limbs held another story. They were long and straight, built for movement across open land. The forelimbs were especially powerful. They needed to anchor the body during a chase and to grip enormous prey. The leg bones carry deep ridges where muscles once attached, evidence of strength that worked like levers. These lions could run with a long, easy stride, covering miles in search of food. Their paws were wide, spreading weight across snow and uneven ground. Every feature supported life in a world that never stayed still. When scientists study these bones, they see more than the shape of a lion. They see an animal finely tuned for endurance and power. The joints of the legs are reinforced to handle sudden bursts of effort. The spine is flexible, yet strong. The ribs flare outward to protect the lungs. The body of the cave lion carried the same balance seen in many predators, a balance between strength and grace, between speed and control. Panthera spelaea belonged to the same branch of the evolutionary tree as the modern lion and tiger, yet it held characteristics that were unique. It lived in colder regions and across larger territories. It needed to be strong enough to compete with other predators that ruled the Ice Age. Each trait was a quiet reminder of the landscape that shaped it. As the years passed, the cave lion evolved alongside the world that held it. The climate kept changing, the prey kept moving, the ice advanced and retreated. Through all of it, Panthera spelaea survived. The evidence of that survival lies in every fossil, every painting on a cave wall, and every frozen fragment that science has uncovered. This animal was not simply a larger version of a modern lion. It was a creature sculpted by the Pleistocene winds, built for the chill of winter, and strengthened by the demands of the hunt. The world of Panthera spelaea was wide and open, and its body was the perfect answer to that open space. When we speak its name today, we stand on the edge of a different time. We look back across thousands of years and see the outline of a predator that walked through a world of ice. Its story is written in stone and soil. Its shape is preserved in bone. It moved across Europe with quiet confidence, part of a landscape that felt both harsh and generous. The cave lion was more than an animal, but was a presence woven into the fabric of the ancient continent, strong enough to leave echoes that still reach us today. When we imagine the cave lion walking across the cold plains, it is easy to picture an animal that feels larger than life. But the belief that Panthera spelaea was a giant does not come from imagination or stories. It comes from the bones themselves. Each fossil carries precise clues, and when scientists study those clues, a very clear picture begins to form. The strongest evidence lies in the long bones of the legs. The femur, which supports the thigh, and the humerus, which forms the upper arm, are often the first pieces that tell the truth of an animal's size. In the cave lion, these bones were massive. They were thicker and heavier than those of modern lions, and they stretched farther along the body. Some femurs found in European caves measure greater in length than those from the largest African lions alive today. The humerus carries deep grooves where powerful muscles once attached. These grooves are like fingerprints of strength. They show not only how long the bones were, but how wide. A wide humerus is a sign of strong forelimbs, muscles that could pull an enormous prey animal to the ground. These bones were not fragile, they were dense and built to carry weight. Bone density is more than just heaviness. It shows how an animal moved. A predator that chased through soft snow or across frozen grasslands needed support. The cave lion's bones tell us that its body had the strength for long hunts, for sudden leaps, and for gripping prey that weighed far more than itself. If we place those bones beside a modern lion's skeleton, the difference becomes clear. The cave lion's bones are shaped for a life that demanded more power. Even the smallest fragments carry that story. The skull of Panthera spelaea offers its own evidence. It was wide across the top, with broad cheekbones that spread outward to make room for large jaw muscles. There are places along the skull where the muscles once anchored, and the marks are deep. These are the attachment points for strength, the tiny landscapes of bone that show how much force the jaw could deliver. A strong jaw was needed to bite into thick hides, to hold on to giant prey, and to crack through bone. The shape of the skull also hints at something else. It was longer than the skull of a modern lion, and when scientists measure it, they see the difference in scale. Some of these skulls belong to animals that would have stood taller at the shoulder than any lion or tiger alive today. The teeth reinforce that impression. They were large, curved, and sharp, shaped to hold and tear. Everything about the skull suggests a predator that was perfectly suited for the demands of the Ice Age. The size of the skull and the strength of the jaw muscles were only part of the story. The rest lies in the ribs, the spine, and the shoulder blades. When these bones are found together, they show how the cave lion's body was put together. The ribs flare outward, making space for a large chest. A large chest means strong lungs and a strong heart. This animal needed stamina. It needed to chase across long distances, to breathe deeply in cold air, and to survive winters where food might be scarce. Comparisons to other big cats help to reveal the truth even more clearly. When paleontologists place the skeleton of Panthera spelaea next to the skeleton of an African lion, the size difference becomes impossible to ignore. The cave lion stood taller, its legs were longer, the skull was broader and heavier, the paws were wider. Even the smallest measurements tell a story of scale. In some cases, the bones of the cave lion are closer in size to those of a Siberian tiger or even larger. Yet the overall proportions suggest something more powerful, something adapted to cold and open space. If we imagine the cave lion standing among modern predators, we can see the difference in shape and balance. The African lion carries a mane and moves with the sleek grace of a warm land. The tiger has weight and strength, built for forests and dense cover. The cave lion carried a body that belonged to winter. It was built for endurance and for confronting enormous prey on open ground. The bones do not tell the whole story, but they offer the foundation. They show size and shape. They show how much muscle once held these bones together. They show how the weight was distributed across the body. The evidence does not stop at size. The thickness and density of the bones tell us that the cave lion needed muscle to match its frame. The ridges and grooves of the limbs reveal where tendons once pulled. The depth of the sockets and joints show how the animal carried itself. Every piece of fossilized bone acts like a map. When scientists study these maps, they see the outline of a giant that lived at the top of its world. From skull to paw, from femur to spine, the cave lion carried a body shaped by the pressure of a cold age. It grew larger because the land allowed it. It grew stronger because the prey demanded it. We do not need to imagine its size. The bones speak clearly, and their message is simple. These animals were giants, and the world they walked through was large enough to hold them. For a very long time, the bones of Panthera spelaea were the only language we had for understanding this great hunter of the Ice Age. They spoke through their size and shape, through their weight and the marks that muscles left behind. But there was another story hidden within those bones. It was smaller than stone or fossil, smaller than the marks of claws or teeth. It waited for science to become quiet and patient enough to hear it. That story was written in ancient DNA. The cold landscapes of the Pleistocene did something rare. They preserved the tiny threads of genetic material that most species lose forever. Some cave lion bones were buried deep in frozen soils. Others rested in caves where the temperature never rose very far. These places became shelters for the past. Inside the bones, inside slivers of tooth and fragments of tissue, strands of DNA remained like whispers of a life once lived. When scientists first began to sequence this ancient DNA, they found pieces so fragmented that they looked like puzzle shards scattered by time. DNA breaks apart after death. It frays and twists. The ends curl and crumble. What remained of the cave lion's genome was partial and delicate, yet it was enough. With careful study, with years of refinement and comparison, the story began to rebuild itself. The sequencing of Panthera spelaea revealed something important. The cave lion was not simply a colder version of the African lion, nor a pale copy of the tiger. It belonged to the same great branch of the cat family, but it was its own lineage, shaped by the chill of European winters and the movement of land across ages. Some parts of its genetic code show a closer relationship to modern lions. Other parts echo the tiger. It stands between them, sharing ancestry with both, yet diverging into its own path long before humans ever wrote their first stories. These discoveries helped scientists place the cave lion on the timeline of evolution. They could see when its ancestors separated from the big cats of the south. They could trace how it spread across Eurasia and adapted to climates that changed again and again. The DNA was a map not of bones or footprints, but of bloodlines and migrations. It showed how Panthera spelaea followed the expanding grasslands and crossed frozen corridors of land. The genome carried another message. It told scientists not just who the cave lion was, but how its population changed over time. When DNA breaks down, the pattern of damage can reveal how abundant or scarce a species once was. In periods when cave lions were plentiful, the genetic records show greater variety. There were more individuals, more breeding groups, more movement between distant regions. During the coldest peaks of the Ice Age, when the world tightened into deep winters and the forest retreated to tiny pockets of shelter, the cave lions became isolated. Their DNA shows it in quiet ways. The diversity shrank. The lines of ancestry narrowed, like rivers splitting into fewer streams. Groups that had once roamed across thousands of miles became separated by ice and terrain. The genome records not only strength but vulnerability. It holds the marks of times when the world pressed in and reduced their numbers. This pattern of genetic narrowing reveals the subtle pressure of climate. The same cycles that shaped the land also shaped the life that depended on it. During warmer periods, the cave lions spread outward again. Their populations grew. Then the ice returned, and the pattern reversed. The DNA holds these memories, stored like rings inside an ancient tree. These changes were slow and steady, stretching across generations. Ancient DNA also uncovered the paths taken by different populations. Lions of Western Europe carried slightly different genetic markers than those from Siberia. It was a sign that the continent was never a single uniform territory, but a patchwork of habitats and routes. When the cold blocked movement, the lions of one region became isolated from the lions of another. In warmer times, the edges of their world touched again. The more scientists learned from the genome, the more they understood the life of this animal beyond bone and fur. They saw the marks of adaptation in the genes that shaped muscle and metabolism. They saw the signs of a creature built for stamina and strength. These were clues that fossil impressions alone could not provide. They were hints of how the cave lion survived in a world that was always changing. The DNA also told something about the final centuries of its existence. Toward the end of the Ice Age, when climates warmed and forests expanded, the genome shows stronger signs of decline. Genetic bottlenecks appear, showing moments when the population fell sharply. These were not just the final steps toward extinction, they were the last reflections of a species that had survived countless shifts in climate and landscape. Ancient DNA allowed us to listen to the cave lion in a new way. It carried stories of origin and movement. It held memories of plenty and of scarcity. It reminded us that even the greatest animals carry the trace of their world inside their cells. Through these fragile strands of genetic material, the cave lion speaks again, offering a glimpse into the long and quiet journey of life across the frozen heart of Europe. The bones and DNA of Panthera spelaea let us meet this predator close enough to imagine its shape and size. Yet the question that often rises next is quieter. How did these giants hunt in a world of cold plains and sweeping grass? How did they find food across a continent that shifted between deep winter and restless thaw? The answers do not come from a single source. They appear in scattered evidence that lies across Europe, held in the remains of prey animals and in the subtle marks left behind by claws and teeth. Many of the clues come from carcasses of the animals that shared the land with the cave lion. Bones of mammoths, bison, and wild horses show the signs of powerful jaws and sharp teeth. The marks are deep and confident, carved into the thick hides and bones of giants. These were not gentle scavengers lingering at the edges of death. They were hunters strong enough to bring down prey that weighed many times more than themselves. The patterns on the bones are uneven at times, as if multiple predators tugged and tore. In other places, the marks run with clean arcs, the kind that form when a lion clamps down with a decisive grip. Scientists have studied these markings with careful eyes. They see where claws pulled at flesh and where teeth sank into the bones. They can tell whether the kill was fresh or whether the cave lion arrived after the prey had fallen. Many carcasses show signs of injury that likely came during the chase. The leg bones of prey sometimes carry fractures that hint at falls on ice or snow. This suggests a world where speed and surprise work together. The cave lion needed strength and timing, and it used both. Some researchers imagine these predators waiting near the edges of rivers or behind low outcrops of rock. The open plains were vast, yet even in such openness, shadows and quiet places existed. In the Ice Age world, the land rolled with gentle slopes and dips. Snow covered the ridges. Grass grew low and pale beneath the wind. A lion could move silently across this world, blending into the pale light of morning or evening. Others believe the cave lion was capable of endurance hunting. Its long limbs and wide chest suggest stamina. The big cats of the cold plains may have followed herds across great distances, waiting for the moment when a young animal or a weakened adult stepped just a little too far from the group. The hunt may have been a mix of patience and sudden motion, a long silent walk followed by a short burst of speed. This pattern exists in many predators today. Wolves pace through forests and across tundra before striking in unison. Cheetahs follow their prey closely before accelerating with one final rush. The cave lion may have held a hunting rhythm somewhere between these extremes. There is still a question that continues to stir curiosity. Did Panthrospelea hunt alone or in groups? The bones and DNA give us hints, but never a complete answer. Modern lions form prides. Tigers stalk alone. The cave lion lived at a meeting point between these worlds. Some fossils show groups of lions together in caves and shelters, as if they shared resting places. Other pieces of evidence suggest solitary movement over wide areas. The debate is gentle and ongoing. Many scientists believe the cave lion may have been capable of both ways of living. The cold and the movement of prey may have guided them. During seasons of plenty, groups may have formed. In harder times, individuals may have traveled alone. The prey animals themselves also give us clues. Mammoths and bison often moved in groups for protection. A lion hunting such prey alone would face great risk. The marks on some bones suggest multiple predators feeding at once. This could mean shared hunts or shared scavenging. Even modern big cats sometimes hunt together when circumstances demand it. A mother may work with her nearly grown cubs. Partners may move through the snow side by side. It is not hard to imagine the cave lion doing the same. Comparisons to living predators offer gentle glimpses into the past. Wolves hunt with coordination and endurance, using teamwork to bring down prey larger than any individual. Tigers move alone, but they strike with patience and skill, using cover and silence. African lions use speed and strength. They wait for the right moment, then move together. The cave lion may have shared parts of each strategy. It was not bound by the rules of a single environment. It lived across a changing world, and its behavior likely changed with it. Footprints in ancient soil also tell small stories. Lines of tracks show where prey animals once walked. Sometimes the tracks of a lion cross their path. The distance between steps hints at speed or at slow observation. A set of lion footprints leading toward a carcass suggests a quiet approach. The earth remembers every movement, even if the animals are long gone. Some caves contain marks that look like claw scratches on the walls, high above the ground. These may have been signs of territory or communication. They may have been part of rituals or simple marks left by resting animals. Each clue offers a new piece of understanding. None of them speak loudly. They are quiet and careful, the same way the lions themselves must have been when they moved through the frozen grass. The cave lion lived within a world that demanded balance. Hunting was never simple. It took strength and patience. It took knowledge of the land and the movement of herds. Whether alone or in groups, whether ambushing from shadows or following across wide plains, Panthera spelaea found a way to survive in a world ruled by winter and migration. The evidence it left behind is scattered and incomplete, yet every mark carries the voice of a predator that once walked through the heart of ancient Europe. Across the frozen plains of ancient Europe, the presence of Panthera spelaea was only one part of a much larger story. A predator cannot exist without the world that feeds it. The Ice Age landscape held enormous animals, heavy with muscle and layered fur, shaped by the same cold winds that sculpted the cave lion. They moved in groups across the land, like rivers of living strength. These herds were the heartbeat of the Pleistocene, and from their movements we can imagine the challenges faced by the giant predator that followed them. One of the most familiar of these animals was the woolly mammoth. Their bodies towered above the grasses, a forest of ivory tusks rising from the snow. These great herbivores traveled in family groups, young animals sheltered by adults. Mammoths walked with slow weight, their deep footprints marking the ground where they passed. The cave lion shared the same land, yet the mammoth was no easy target. A single mammoth could weigh many times more than a lion. The strength of the adults and the protection of the herd made any attack dangerous. Still, signs of struggle remain in the bone record. Some mammoth remains carry claw marks and bite impressions that suggest cave lions did not ignore these enormous neighbors. They were part of a world where even giants faced danger. Steppe bison were another great source of life on the plains. They moved in herds that shifted with the seasons, feeding on the grasses that grew across the frozen ground. Their horns were sharp and curved, strong enough to drive away predators and protect the young. These bison did not move quietly. They stirred the earth beneath their hooves. When winter settled in, their breath rose into the cold air like mist. Their bodies were powerful and thick with fur. The cave lion would have needed strategy to face them. Hunting such prey required timing and often more than one attempt. The evidence of these encounters is preserved in scattered fossil sites. Bones show the marks of teeth and claws, not only from lions but from hyenas and other predators of the time. The Ice Age did not guarantee success to any hunter. Each kill was an achievement carved from strength and risk. Wild horses also grazed across these plains. They were swift runners with strong legs and keen senses. Their coats were thick and coarse, adapted to the cold winds that moved across the land. Horses formed their own communities, watching the horizon for danger. They could flee quickly when predators approached. For a cave lion, a horse hunt demanded speed and patience. The lion had to judge distance and choose the right moment to strike. Fossil evidence of horse carcasses shows the familiar marks of powerful bites at the neck and hind legs. These patterns paint a picture of fast, decisive action. The cave lion may have used the vast open landscape to its advantage, running alongside its prey before pulling it down in a burst of strength. Reindeer also crossed these plains. They followed the tundra and the cold forests, feeding on the hardy plants that survived winter. Their hooves adjusted to snow and soft ground, spreading weight across the frozen earth. Reindeer were more vulnerable than mammoths or bison. Their smaller size made them a more practical prey. Yet even these animals traveled in large groups. A lion stalking them needed patience and understanding of the herd's movement. Ancient bones show bite marks and broken ribs that suggest attacks from multiple angles. Whether by ambush or chase, the cave lion found a way to thrive among these herds. Hunting in such a world was never simple. The open plains did not offer many places to hide. Snow reflected the light of the sun and moon. The wind carried every movement across the land. The cave lion may have crouched low against the ground or used the low rise of hills and riverbanks. It may have waited for the moment when the herd clustered too close or the young strayed toward the edge. These decisions were made in the silence of instinct, shaped by years of living on the land. At times, the cave lion may have scavenged from kills made by other predators. This was not a sign of weakness, but a strategy shared by many great hunters. The remains of prey often show marks from different teeth and jaws. Hyenas and wolves were also part of this world. They circled the same carcasses and watched the same herds. Competition for food was a constant presence. A fresh kill did not belong to one animal alone. It belonged to the balance of the land. The cave lion may have dragged away remains when the opportunity appeared. The struggle for survival was part of the rhythm of the plains. Some fossil sites show bones arranged in ways that suggest cooperative feeding. Multiple lions may have shared the reward. Other sites show scavenging long after the kill. The meat was torn from the bone in stages. The marks reveal a slow and careful process of feeding. Every predator had a role. The land could not waste energy. Even the leftovers fed other creatures. The Ice Age world asked for resilience. The prey animals became strong because the land demanded it. The cave lion became a giant for the same reason. The relationship between predator and prey was not one of chaos or chance. It was a long and delicate dance, shaped by cold winds, open plains, and the endless needs of hunger and movement. When we look at the bones of mammoths, bison, horses, and reindeer, we see the shadows of ancient hunts. We see the power of animals that lived without fences and without fear of distant horizons. The cave lion walked in their footsteps and left its own marks behind. Together they created the ecosystem that defined the Ice Age. Their lives and struggles shaped the land, and through the memory of their bones, we see the story of a predator that lived among giants. The ancient plains of Europe were never ruled by a single predator. The cave lion shared its world with other hunters and scavengers, each shaped by the same cold breath of the Ice Age. They moved through the frozen grasses and forests like shadows in a vast mosaic of survival. This was not a quiet landscape. It carried the footsteps of many powerful animals, each competing for the same resources, each carving its presence into the earth and into the memories of those who later studied their bones. One of the most striking of these predators was the cave hyena. Their remains are found in deep caverns, where they built dens and raised their young. The cave hyena was larger and stronger than the hyenas of Africa today. Its body carried the strength needed to pull apart carcasses and chase prey across the open plains. The jaws of the cave hyena were powerful enough to crush bones into fragments. Their teeth left marks that still show up on fossils of mammoths and bison. They were skilled scavengers, but they were also hunters in their own right. The bones of their prey tell the story of conflict and competition. Many prehistoric sites contain bones that have been cracked open to reach the marrow inside. This was a world where nothing was wasted. Hyenas created caches of bones in caves, stacking them in piles that have lasted for tens of thousands of years. They lived in large clans, with social structures that allowed them to fight off other predators. The cave lion would have crossed paths with them often. Sometimes the lion would have stolen kills from hyenas, and sometimes the reverse happened. The balance between these two predators was always shifting, always uncertain. Another presence on the plains was the dire wolf. These wolves were not identical to the wolves that walk the earth today, but they were closely related. Their bodies were sturdy and well built for endurance. Their teeth were strong enough to hold on to struggling prey. Dire wolves often hunted in packs, using numbers to compensate for size. Fossils from pack members show shared injuries and healed wounds, small glimpses into a world where cooperation offered survival. Their movements likely followed the herds. The same trails that bison and horses used would have carried the wolves. They worked together to corner prey and bring it down with coordinated attacks. The howl of a wolf carried across the plains may have been a common sound in the Ice Age. Wolves and cave lions were rivals, yet they lived side by side, shaped by the same winds and driven by the same hunger. In the forested regions and the higher slopes lived another giant. The cave bear was one of the largest carnivores to ever exist in Europe. These bears were enormous, with long limbs and thick fur for warmth. Their skeletons show the strength of their shoulders and the size of their paws. The cave bear was different from the lion and the hyena. It did not always hunt. Much of its diet came from plants and roots. Yet a bear of that size did not need to hunt often to become a threat. When food was scarce, the cave bear became a predator capable of claiming territory or defending a carcass from other animals. The caves of Europe were often shared spaces for many species. Bears hibernated there in winter. Hyenas stored bones and raised their young in the same dark shelters. Sometimes the remains of lions are found in these caves as well. The walls of these ancient shelters carry the marks of claws and the scratches of teeth. These places remind us that the predators of the Ice Age did not simply live in different areas. Their lives crossed in quiet and sometimes violent ways. The competition for food and space created a careful hierarchy. The cave lion was at the top, but not alone. Its strength and size placed it among the most powerful hunters, but it was part of a network of predators that shaped the land around them. A cave lion could drive hyenas away from a kill, but walls of strong jaws and sharp teeth would return when the lion stepped back. Wolves watched from a distance, ready to move in when the opportunity appeared. The cave bear stood apart, following its own rhythm of the seasons, yet its presence influenced the others. In a world with so many great predators, the cave lion found its place through a mix of strength and patience. Fossils show where lions fed on carcasses already touched by hyena jaws. Other remains reveal where the lions made the first strike. The lines between hunter and scavenger blurred. The cold demanded that each creature take every chance it could. Survival was not a contest of simple dominance. It was a quieter dance, driven by timing and need. This hierarchy shaped the Ice Age in profound ways. When the cave lion approached a herd, the wolves would retreat. When a bear claimed a den, the hyenas moved on. Each predator held power, but none held it forever. They existed together in a world where every decision mattered. The cave lion stood among them, not because it was always the strongest or the fastest, but because it adapted to a land where other predators were never far away. As the ages passed and the landscape changed, these relationships continued to shift. The bones that remain show the marks of competition and coexistence. They show a world where predators lived not as isolated hunters, but as participants in a wide and changing tapestry of life. The cave lion was one thread in that tapestry, woven alongside wolves, hyenas, and bears, each adding to the story of the Ice Age. As the Ice Age world continued to take shape in all its vast and shifting forms, there was one detail about Panthera spelaea that stood apart from its modern relatives. For the lions of Africa today, the mane has become one of the most recognizable features, a crown of fur that surrounds the neck and head. Yet the cave lions of ancient Europe, so closely related in lineage, seem to have worn no such mantle. Their heads rose bare and smooth from their shoulders, framed only by thick winter coats and muscles shaped by cold. The absence of a mane was not an accident of evolution. It was a quiet answer to the demands of the frozen world. In cold climates, every strand of hair carries meaning. Thick fur traps air and warms the body, but a mane is different. It is heavy and dense, a structure that requires energy to maintain and adds weight that does not always serve survival. In the Ice Age, where the wind swept across the plains with sharp precision, The cave lion did not need extra insulation around the neck. Instead, nature sculpted a different solution. The fur of Panthera spelaea likely extended evenly across its body, forming a layer that protected the skin from the bite of winter. The cold shaped everything. A mane that collected snow or ice would drag on the lion as it moved. It would freeze and cling to the fur, making each hunt more difficult. The absence of a mane became an advantage. A smooth, even coat allowed the lion to slip through snowdrifts and across frozen ground without slowing. The cold asked the cave lion to let go of this familiar symbol of strength. In exchange, it became better suited for the world it inherited. There is another reason that scientists believe the cave lion lacked a mane. Growing and maintaining such a heavy collar of fur requires energy. In the warmer climates of Africa, food can be found more regularly. In the Ice Age world, the land did not always offer such plenty. Seasons shifted between scarcity and abundance with stark clarity. Every calorie mattered. The energy saved by not growing a mane could be redirected into building muscle or preserving fat, both more useful for survival in the cold. Evolution does not create decoration without purpose. The absence of a mane was a response to necessity. It gave the cave lion balance and endurance. Ancient art also adds to this understanding. Across Europe, on cave walls touched by the hands of early humans, the lions are drawn with careful observation. The figures show powerful bodies and long limbs. They show the shape of the head and shoulders with clear lines, but they do not show a mane. The drawings come from those who saw the cave lion in life and remembered its presence. These paintings are evidence as strong as fossil or bone. They reveal how the animal looked to the people who shared its land. The cave paintings hold another silent message. They show that humans did not imagine the cave lion as a reflection of the modern lion they later came to know. Instead, they saw something different. The smooth head, the strong neck, and the thick winter coat were captured with precision. The absence of a mane is not accidental in these images. It is a faithful recording of a real animal. The art bridges time and confirms what the bones and the climate already suggest. There were practical advantages to life without a mane in a snowy environment. When hunting, the cave lion needed to move with ease. Snow and frost could cling to hair and weigh it down. A smooth coat shed ice and water more readily. The mane is also a signal in modern lions, used for intimidation and communication. In the Ice Age world, where the lion often faced prey larger than itself and predators of equal strength, the silent language of survival did not require a mane. Stealth, strength, and patience spoke more clearly. The climate shaped the body of the lion just as it shaped the land. Over generations, nature refined the features of Panthera spelaea, smoothing away anything that did not serve its life. The lack of a mane allowed for a wider range of movement. It allowed the cave lion to blend into the snow and the pale light of the sky. It created a creature perfectly suited for winter and long travel. The truth of the cave lion's appearance does not rest on a single piece of evidence, but on many threads woven together. Fossils show the spaces where muscles anchored. DNA reveals the adaptations that suited cold weather. Cave paintings capture the smooth shape of the head. Each line of understanding follows the same conclusion. The cave lion did not need a mane. The world around it provided everything it needed to hunt, to stay warm, and to survive. The absence of a mane was not a loss, it was a quiet transformation. In the cold plains of ancient Europe, Panthera spelaea moved through a world where the winds carried ice, and the earth shifted with every season. Its body was shaped by that world. It walked with the strength of a predator born from snow. It lived within the rhythm of the Ice Age, and its smooth, powerful form became an expression of the land that sustained it. When we imagine one cave lion moving across the pale grasslands of ancient Europe, it becomes natural to wonder how far such an animal needed to roam. The cold world demanded energy, and every animal living in that world carried the weight of survival across long distances. A predator the size of Panthera spelaea could not remain in a single valley or forest. The land itself became a path that stretched from horizon to horizon. Scientists cannot follow these lions directly through time, yet the clues left behind allow us to draw a gentle picture of their territories. The modern world offers a small window into what was once possible. African lions living today can travel across great distances, and their territories shift in response to herds and the availability of prey. A pride may move across many square miles simply because survival asks it to. The cave lion likely needed even more space. The prey it hunted crossed the land in herds that were always in motion. Mammoths, bison, and horses did not remain in one place through the seasons. They wandered as food and safety allowed, and the lions followed. Territory was not only about space, it was also about the energy required to live as one of the largest predators of the Ice Age. A single lion needed a great deal of food. Even the smaller individuals would have required frequent meals to maintain strength in the cold. The larger ones may have needed the equivalent of several reindeer or a bison calf to sustain them through winter storms. The land had to offer enough prey to support such demands, and that meant the territory had to stretch beyond what we might expect. The cave lion's body and size were shaped by a landscape that could not be owned or held, only crossed and understood. In the bones and teeth of these lions, there are traces of those journeys. Scientists have looked at the chemical signatures stored within fossilized remains. These signatures come from the minerals and water that the lions consumed. They settle into the teeth and bones like gentle markings of the land. The presence of certain elements can tell us where an animal lived or traveled. In this way, researchers can see that cave lions did not stay in one place for long. Their bodies hold the record of travel across rivers, plains, and mountain passes. The isotopes reveal movement patterns that stretch across entire regions. Some cave lions were found in places far from their likely birthplaces. The minerals in their teeth suggest that they roamed great distances through life. Others show more local signatures, as if they lived and hunted within familiar ground. These differences show a flexible and varied world. A cave lion could expand its range when the seasons demanded, or it could remain near a source of food when prey was plentiful. The land did not have one single pattern or rule. It shifted with the rhythm of the Ice Age. Seasonal movement played a large part in shaping these territories. In the summer months, the plains opened into wide stretches of grass. Herds traveled northward into cooler ground, and the lions followed. In winter, ice retreated south across the land and closed the world into smaller spaces. In those months, the predators would travel long distances to reach prey and suitable shelter. The footprints left in ancient soil and the distribution of their remains across Europe show that these animals were not bound by narrow limits. The concept of territory itself may have been different from what we see today. Modern lions often fight to protect borders from others of their kind, but for cave lions, the landscape may have been too large and too shifting for such rigid boundaries. Competition existed among wolves, hyenas, and other predators, yet the world was wide enough for them all. Instead of strict borders, there may have been shared pathways and overlapping ranges. The absence of long-term settlements suggests a world in constant motion. The size of territory also reflected the climate. During colder periods when prey animals clustered closer together in search of food, the lions might have needed less space. During warmer stretches, when herds spread further across the plains and forests, the territories widened. The land itself became a living map of ice and vegetation. A cave lion needed the freedom to follow the herds, and the herds needed the freedom to follow the seasons. Some researchers believe that the territories of male cave lions may have been especially large. The strongest individuals could have roamed across entire river basins, following prey from low valleys to mountain slopes. The females, skilled hunters and likely caretakers of the young, may have stayed in smaller ranges, but these roles were shaped by conditions we can only trace through the marks left on the landscape. The movement of cave lions can be seen in their bones, in the stories written in the minerals they carried within them. It can be seen in the way fossils are scattered from Western Europe to the far reaches of Siberia. It can be seen in the trails that the Ice Age herds carved into the earth. Territory for the cave lion was not a fixed place. It was a path shared with the wind and the snow. It was a journey that stretched across seasons and continents. The world around it provided the space, and the lion answered by moving through that space as a creature shaped by cold and by distance. In the end, the size of their territory was as vast and shifting as the land that held them. As the Ice Age world continued to shift beneath the weight of wind and winter, humans began to step into the same ancient plains that the cave lion already knew so well. Long before cities or settled villages, long before stories were written down, the earliest people walked these frozen landscapes with careful eyes and silent footsteps. They arrived not as rulers of the land, but as travelers and survivors, shaped by the same cold that formed the lion. The first humans to share Europe with Panthera spelaea were Neanderthals. They moved slowly into the continent long before our own species arrived. Their lives were tied to the rhythms of the land. They built shelters near rivers and among the rocks, using fire to soften the winter nights. They hunted the same animals that the cave lions hunted, and they gathered food from the same plains. These early humans carried simple tools made from stone and bone. Their hands shaped the land in ways that speak softly across time. Neanderthals and cave lions met where the trails of mammoths and horses crossed. They shared hunting grounds not by choice, but because the land gave them both the same opportunities. Fossil evidence shows that in some places their territories overlapped. A river valley rich with bison or a forest bursting with berries and roots could draw both humans and lions. This closeness created a world where danger lived in every shadow. The arrival of Homo sapiens added another layer to this story. Our ancestors reached Europe later, spreading from distant lands and adjusting to the cold of the north. They brought new tools and new strategies. They learned to build stronger shelters and to craft weapons from sharp stone. These early sapiens also hunted the same prey as the cave lions, walking the same pathways and setting their camps in places that offered shelter from the wind. Their presence did not replace the Neanderthals at first. Instead, for a time, both species lived near each other, and both met the cave lion. The evidence of these encounters rests in the bones that remain. In a few rare cases, human skeletons show bite marks from cave lions. The marks are not guesses or stories imagined from ancient fear. They are measured traces of teeth pressing into bone. One such fossil from Central Europe carries the unmistakable imprint of sharp jaws closing around an arm. Another skeleton holds the mark of a lion's bite on the thigh. These wounds speak of moments when humans and lions crossed paths, not as distant observers, but in the midst of struggle. Yet these stories are not only about conflict, they also reveal how early humans adapted in response to the presence of a predator. The first defenses were simple. Fire created light in the dark and warmth in bitter cold. Flames kept predators away from camps at night. The crackle of burning wood became a shield stronger than stone. In some regions, early humans gathered in small groups for safety. More eyes meant more warning. More bodies meant more strength. Stone tools served as another defense. Spears carved from bone or sharpened rock could reach across the space between hunter and hunted. In early sites, archaeologists have found spear tips broken in ways that suggest violent encounters. These fragments carry stories of courage and necessity. They show moments where survival was measured by the strength of an arm and the timing of a strike. Even the way humans hunted changed in response to the cave lion. Some groups learned to follow the herds at different times of day, choosing paths that avoided the lion's routes. Others took advantage of cliffs and riverbanks where prey could be driven into traps. These strategies were shaped by observation and memory. The land had to be read like a map. Tracks in the soil and claw marks on trees became signs to guide movement and decisions. The relationship between humans and cave lions was complex. They were competitors, but they were also watchers of each other. In some places, the bones of lions have been found near human settlements. This may have been the result of scavenging after a hunt. It may have been a mark of respect or fear. The presence of lion bones in the homes of early humans suggests a world where people understood the strength and importance of these predators. Over generations, this shared landscape created a quiet dialogue between species. Early humans learned how to protect themselves. They carried torches into the dark and built shelters against the cold. They taught their children when to move and when to stay hidden. The cave lions, in turn, adapted to the growing human presence. They moved through the plains with caution, listening to the crackle of fire and the hum of human voices. These first encounters remind us of a time when the world was not divided between people and animals, it was shared. The cave lion was not a distant symbol or a creature seen only in imagination. It lived beside early humans and Neanderthals, shaping their lives as much as they shaped the land. The marks left in bone and the stories held in archaeology show the meeting of two remarkable species, both learning to survive in a world of ice and open space. Long before history was written, before words were carved into stone or pressed into clay, there were drawings. The Paleolithic world did not speak in books or monuments. It spoke through art. On the walls of ancient caves, early humans painted what they knew, what they feared, and what they lived beside. Among these paintings, one creature appears again and again. Panthera spelea, the cave lion, becomes a shape carved in charcoal, and ochre, a living presence captured in quiet lines on rock. One of the most famous places where these lions appear is Chauvet Cave in southern France. The walls of this cavern hold some of the oldest and most detailed prehistoric art in the world. When researchers first entered the cave, they found images of animals painted with a skill that felt almost modern. Horses, bison, mammoths, and rhinos stand in layered compositions, but among them are lions, drawn with an eye for detail that reveals more than simple observation. The artists knew these predators. They studied the curve of the spine, the shape of the head, and the power in the shoulders. They captured the movement of a lion stepping through the grass, the grace of a body built for the hunt. The paintings in Chauvet Cave show male and female lions without manes, confirming the image that science has pieced together from fossils and DNA. These ancient artists were not inventing their subjects, they were recording what they saw. The precision of the drawings reveals an understanding of anatomy. The legs are strong and straight, the paws are wide, the heads are smooth. Even the expressions on the painted lions suggest intent and awareness. These were predators that left an impression on human memory. Prehistoric art is often dismissed as simple or symbolic, yet the drawings of cave lions show a level of accuracy that is hard to ignore. Many researchers believe that the artists spent time observing the animals from a distance, perhaps while following herds or searching for safe places to camp. The careful lines and shading demonstrate an understanding of muscle and form. These artists were not guessing, They were describing a creature that moved through their world. Some paintings reveal behavior rather than just appearance. In Chauvet, one image shows a pair of lions walking together, their heads facing forward. Another scene depicts a group of lions surrounding prey. These scenes suggest cooperation, or at least a shared moment among the animals. The drawings show the lions as active hunters, not as static symbols. The artists captured the dynamic between predator and prey, the same dynamic that shaped the Ice Age plains. What is most striking is the number of cave lion paintings that exist across Europe. Although many animals appear in prehistoric art, lions are among the most commonly drawn predators. They appear in France, Spain, Germany, and beyond. Sometimes they are sketched with simple lines. Other times they are drawn with careful shading and detail. Their presence in so many caves suggests importance. These animals were not rare sightings, they were neighbors. They shaped the world of early humans so deeply that their image was preserved for tens of thousands of years. The presence of so many lion paintings also highlights something about the human mind. The artist chose to draw not only the animals they hunted, but the animals that hunted them. To draw the cave lion was to acknowledge its power and its place in the shared landscape. The cave walls became a kind of memory, a place where humans preserved the shape of a creature that moved like a shadow across their lives. These paintings tell us what ancient people saw when they looked at the cave lion. They saw strength, movement, and presence. They saw the smooth head and powerful shoulders. They saw the way the lions gathered near prey and near each other. They saw the predator as a living part of the world. The art provides an image that fossil bones alone cannot offer. It gives the cave lion color and motion. It shows how it stood and walked and turned its head. It shows a creature fully alive. Some of the caves contain dozens of lion figures. Others show only one or two, but the repetition across the continent speaks clearly. The cave lion was not just another animal on the plains, it was a figure of significance. The painters did not need words to express this. Their drawings are enough. The soft lines of charcoal, the curves of the bodies, and the patterns of movement reveal what human eyes once saw. They saw a world shared with large predators, and they left a record of that world in the stone. These paintings remind us that ancient humans were not separate from nature. They watched the seasons change. They listened to the sounds of predators moving through the grass. They painted what they knew, and in doing so they offered a window into the past. Through the art of Chauvet and other caves across Europe, we see the cave lion not only as a fossil or a symbol, but as a living presence remembered by the people who saw it. As the Ice Age world unfolded across the plains and forests of ancient Europe, there was another moment in this long story where the paths of two powerful beings crossed. On one side stood the cave lion, sculpted by cold and distance into a hunter of great strength. On the other side stood the Neanderthal, a human whose hands shaped tools from stone and whose mind was sharpened by the same harsh winters and hungry seasons. Their encounters did not always end with quiet observation. Sometimes the meeting became a struggle, and the remains of those struggles still rest in the earth today. Archaeologists have discovered sites where the bones of lions and Neanderthals lie close together. These places hint that the relationship between them was more than distant respect. Some lion bones carry marks that did not come from the teeth of hyenas or the jaws of wolves. They came from stone blades and sharpened spears. The marks are fine and deliberate, carved with purpose. They tell us that Neanderthals hunted the cave lion. It was not an accident or a rare act. It happened often enough for the evidence to remain across many regions. The marks speak of skill and courage. Removing the skin of a lion required knowledge of its body, where the joints lay, and how the hide could be peeled from muscle and bone. These cuts were clean and practiced. The people who made them were familiar with the animal. They did not approach with fear alone. They approached with understanding. They saw the lion not only as a threat, but as a source of meat and fur, and perhaps even as a creature whose strength could be borrowed. There are places where lion bones have been found inside Neanderthal camps. Some bones were shaped into tools or used as ornaments. Others show signs of butchering. These bones reveal that the Neanderthals were not always the hunted. They had methods of their own. Their weapons were simple compared to those of later humans, but they were powerful and skilled hands. Spears carved from wood or tipped with sharp stone could strike deep. A coordinated attack against a lion would have demanded careful planning and bravery, yet these attacks happened. The hunting strategies of Neanderthals were shaped by the world they lived in. They hunted mammoths and bison. They understood the movement of herds, the strength of cold, and the need for teamwork. When facing a lion, these skills became essential. A single Neanderthal could rarely face such a predator alone, but a group with spears and fire could drive the lion away from a carcass or corner it against a rock face. Firelight flickering in the wind became a shield against the shadows. Spears held tightly in strong hands formed a line of defense. There are also signs that Neanderthals may have taken young lions from dens. A cub could grow into a source of fur or bone. Perhaps Neanderthals learned to predict where lions denned, searching for the patches of earth warmed by the bodies of sleeping predators. Such risks carried great reward, but also great danger. A lion would not abandon a den without a fight. The remains of these encounters are rare, yet they appear in enough archaeological sites to show that these moments were part of life. The question rises naturally: why would Neanderthals risk hunting a creature so powerful? One reason may have been competition. The cave lion hunted the same prey, and when food was scarce, removing a predator meant removing a rival. Another reason may have been survival itself. A lion represented not only meat, but also a thick hide that could become clothing or shelter. In the cold plains of Europe, fur held the warmth that could keep life alive through winter. A lion's tooth or claw could be shaped into tools or ornaments. The body of the predator held value beyond the moment of the hunt. There may have been deeper reasons as well. The lion was a creature that shared the world with Neanderthals. It walked the same paths and watched the same herds. When Neanderthals faced a lion, they faced a reflection of their own struggle against the cold. Taking the life of such an animal may have carried meaning. It may have been seen as an act that connected them to the world around them. The markings carved into lion bones suggest careful cutting, almost ritual in some cases. Whether these acts held symbolic significance or were only practical, the result was the same. The lion became part of the Neanderthal story. Some bones of Neanderthals also bear the markings of lion teeth. These marks are few, but they speak of the times when the predator did not yield. The cave lion was not always driven away. It remained a creature of strength, capable of taking the life of a human as easily as it took down a horse or bison. These meetings were moments of risk for both predator and prey. They were moments of quiet tension in a world where survival demanded courage from every living thing. The conflict between Neanderthals and cave lions was not the battle of one species against another. It was the story of two intelligent, powerful beings sharing a land that could not always provide enough for both. Their struggle was written in stone and bone. It remains in the scars left on fossils and in the memories traced on ancient tools. Through these signs, we glimpse a past where human hands and lion claws crossed paths, and where each encounter left marks that still speak across the ages. As the ancient world continued to shape the fate of both humans and cave lions, one discovery changed the nature of that meeting forever. It flickered in the darkness. It glowed in the night. Fire was more than warmth or light. It became a boundary between silence and danger, a quiet shield against the eyes that watched from the shadows. The Ice Age world was governed by cold, but when humans learned to command fire, they gained a power that every predator recognized. The first sparks of fire belonged to nature itself. Lightning fell from the sky, igniting dry grass. Heat rose from volcanic stone. Humans watched these flames and learned their language. They gathered embers and carried them from place to place. Later, they learned to create fire with their own hands, striking stone against stone and coaxing a tiny spark into flame. This new skill changed everything. Fire became a constant companion. It burned at the edges of camps, a moving circle of light that kept the night at bay. Predators understood fire in a different way. Their instincts told them to avoid it. The crackling sounds and shifting light meant danger. The heat stung the air and carried unfamiliar scents. In the paintings and artifacts left behind, we glimpse how fire separated human beings from the other animals. The cave lion, strong and fearless in many moments, would pause at the edge of firelight. It watched from the darkness, its eyes glowing with reflected flame. Fire created a boundary the lion rarely crossed. The role of fire as protection was not simply about fear, it was about space. Fire pushed predators away and gave humans room to gather and rest. It offered time to prepare tools, to eat, and to plan for the hunt. The flames transformed the night from a place of helplessness into a place of shelter. They softened the edges of danger. The fire's glow allowed humans to see movement in the grass, to sense when something approached. A circle of flame became a safe harbor in a world filled with powerful hunters. This protection was especially important during certain seasons. The winter months pressed the land into stillness. Food became scarce. Animals grew desperate for prey. Hunger pushed cave lions and hyenas to take risks. They approached closer to human camps, drawn by the smell of food and the warmth of living bodies. During these cold nights, fire did more than keep the predators at a distance. It became the difference between safety and threat. The flames were a message in the dark, not here, stay away. In the warmer months, when the plains were green and herds moved freely, the danger shifted. Predators were less desperate, but more active. The night carried the calls of wolves and the movement of lions through grass. In these seasons, fire remained a constant companion. It created a rhythm to the human day. The fire was lit at dusk and tended through the night. The warmth was welcome, but the true value of the flame was the boundary it drew. The relationship between fire and predators becomes especially clear in the caves of Europe. These deep and hidden places were not empty shelters. They were homes and dens. Bears slept there through winter, hyenas stored bones and raised cubs. Lions likely rested in the darkest chambers. When humans arrived, firelight touched the walls of those caves. The soot from ancient torches still marks the ceiling of many archaeological sites. These dark places became contested ground. There are caves where layers of soot and ash lie above claw marks and bones. The patterns show that different species occupied the same space at different times. A cave that held lions in one season might shelter humans in another. Fire was the tool that made this possible. Its light pierced the darkness and claimed the space. Without it, humans would not have dared to sleep in those places. The walls of these caves show evidence of painting and tool making. They became sanctuaries because fire made them safe. But this safety was never absolute. Predators continued to test the boundaries. There are footprints that show where lions crept near campsites. There are remains of torches abandoned in haste. These details remind us that fire was not a perfect barrier. It was a balance, a negotiation between fear and survival. The flames could push predators away for a time, but they did not erase the presence of danger. In this way, Fire did more than offer protection. It changed the nature of the world. It allowed humans to build a life that was not always on the move. The flames made the night smaller. They shrank the darkness to a manageable circle. Around those circles, communities grew. Stories were shared. Tools were made. Lions watched from beyond the light, aware of this shift, yet still woven into the world that humans inhabited. Fire did not make the cave lion disappear. It simply created a new pattern of survival. Humans and lions continued to cross paths on the plains and at the edges of forests, but the flame gave humans time to prepare, time to rest, and time to think beyond the moment of danger. The light of fire became a symbol of adaptation, the same way the lion's strength or the mammoth's fur spoke of their own place in the Ice Age. In those quiet flames, we see the beginning of what it meant for humans to share the world with animals that were stronger, faster, and more powerful. Fire burned softly at the center of that fragile balance, a simple element that changed the rhythm of life on the ancient earth. There were moments in the Ice Age when the cold grew stronger than ever before. The winds sharpened into blades of frost. The snow rose higher across the plains. Ice crept southward and locked whole regions beneath a white and endless silence. These were the glacial maximums, the seasons when winter ruled with a heavy hand. During these long stretches of cold, many animals struggled to survive. Yet Panthera spelea continued to walk across the frozen world. The cave lion did not simply endure these cold periods, it adapted to them. Its body carried the strength and shape needed to move through deep snow and bitter winds. The world it lived in shifted again and again. The warmth of brief interglacial periods would fade, and the cold would return. The lion learned the rhythm of this climate. It became a creature shaped by patience and resilience. During glacial maximums, prey animals grew scarcer. The herds that once moved freely across the plains began to shrink. Mammoths and bison still traveled across the landscape, but their numbers thinned. Reindeer migrated into smaller and more protected ranges. Horses grazed where they could find patches of hardy grass. Every animal was forced to move with greater caution, always searching for the next place where food might grow beneath the snow. For the cave lion, these changes demanded more than strength. They demanded energy. A predator that large needed regular meals, yet the world often offered too few. The lion had to travel farther and wait longer. Each hunt required patience and calculation. The deep cold slowed movement. The air held little warmth. The prey often gathered in tight groups, guarded against danger. The lion had to read the land with careful attention, choosing the right moment to strike. Scientists have studied fossils from the coldest times and found that the cave lion's bones reflect these challenges. Some lions grew larger in response to the cold. Others show signs of thinner conditions. The harsh climate tested their bodies and pushed them to the limits of survival. The patterns in their remains reveal years of scarcity and abundance. Their bodies were mirrors of the land. Their physiology held many clues about how they survived the cold. The cave lion carried a thick layer of muscle beneath its fur, not only for strength but also for warmth. In cold climates, muscle acts like insulation. It stores energy and protects the body from freezing temperatures. The lion's large size became a shield against the elements. Bigger animals lose heat more slowly. The world shaped the lion's form so it could endure nights when winter settled heavily upon the plains. Their fur also changed. The coat of a cave lion was likely dense and layered. During the coldest periods, the fur would thicken even more, trapping air and warmth. Some scientists believe that the coloration may have shifted with the climate. A paler coat offered camouflage in snowy landscapes, allowing the lion to move unseen across white ground. This was not luxury, It was adaptation that made each hunt possible. The lion's endurance was another secret to survival. Its lungs and heart worked efficiently in the cold. It could travel long distances with steady steps. It could follow the slow movement of herds, waiting for the moment when hunger tipped the balance of risk. The cave lion was not a creature of sudden decisions. It was patient. It knew when to stand still and when to move. There were times when the glacial world pressed in tightly. Food became scarce. The lion may have turned to scavenging more often during these periods. It might have approached carcasses left behind by wolves or hyenas. Fossils show marks that suggest cooperation and competition both. The world of the cold did not allow waste. Every scrap of meat, every bone marrow was precious. Even a predator of such size had to learn to take the opportunities that appeared. Shelter also played a role. In the coldest times, the lion may have sought protection in caves or rocky outcrops. These shelters provided relief from the wind and snow. They offered places to rest and to wait. We find their bones buried in these places, showing that they were not always roaming. They knew where to find refuge when the weather became too fierce. The cold shaped every life in Europe. It shaped the movement of the herds, the growth of forests and plains, and the behavior of predators. It shaped the cave lion most of all. The glacial maximums did not weaken this animal. They made it more capable of walking the line between hunger and endurance. The lion did not conquer the cold. It became part of it. It grew stronger with each winter. Its body became a record of the Ice Age, a living answer to the question of how to survive when warmth is scarce and food is uncertain. When we imagine the cave lion moving through the deepest winter, we see an animal that understood the land better than almost any other. It carried the lessons of countless seasons. It felt the pulse of survival in every step. In the coldest periods of the Ice Age, when many creatures retreated or vanished, the cave lion remained. It lived within the fierce beauty of winter and walked across its frozen heart. There were places in the Ice Age where the open plains gave way to forests. Not all of Europe was endless grass and snow. Some regions were softened by trees, where branches reached toward the sky and shadows gathered beneath the leaves. The borders between these worlds changed with the passing of centuries. The land itself breathed with the rhythm of cold and warmth. The forests grew and retreated many times, responding to the shifting of climate and the pull of the seasons. For the cave lion, these edges between the grasslands and the trees were places of possibility and challenge. The lions preferred the open plains, where their bodies and hunting style belonged. The grasslands offered space to move and to see across great distances. A lion standing on the plains could watch the movement of herds and plan the hunt. The wide world made their strength useful. Their long legs could carry them swiftly through snow and across frozen ground. Their eyesight could measure distance beneath the pale winter sun. In contrast, the forests held different rules. Trees created barriers and shadows that broke the rhythm of movement. The undergrowth tangled around paws. The world grew smaller and harder to see. Yet the borders where the plains met the forest were rich with life. The trees offered shelter to deer and smaller prey. They provided protection from the wind and a place for animals to hide. When the climate warmed and the forests expanded, the edge moved forward, pushing the grasslands away. These movements happened over thousands of years. During cold periods, the forest shrank. They retreated into valleys and lower slopes. The grasslands spread across much of Europe, stretching from mountain to sea. The cave lions followed the wide plains and moved with the herds. They hunted in open space where their bodies could do what they were made to do. The world was clear and open, but when warmth returned, the trees began to creep outward again. Slowly, branches spread into the plains. Saplings took root in the soil. The forest floor grew dense with leaves and plants. These changes were not sudden, they unfolded like a whisper across generations. The cave lions adapted in their own quiet way. They learned to hunt near the forest edge, where the prey would gather to feed on tender leaves and grasses. They learned to move between the open plains and the shaded cover of trees. The expansion of the forest changed the nature of the hunt. On the plains, the lions depended on speed and strength. In the forest, the hunt became a game of silence. The lion needed to move with care, stepping over roots and through shadows. Its pale coat, which blended so easily into snow and grass, stood out against the darker trunks and leaves. The lion had to choose its moments carefully. It waited for animals to wander from the safety of trees. The forest edge became a place where patience was as important as power. Scientists study the fossils of prey to see how these changes shaped the lives of cave lions. When the forests were smaller, large herbivores dominated the landscape. Mammoths, bison, and horses left deep tracks in the frozen ground. When the forests grew, smaller animals became more common. Deer, wild boar, and forest-dwelling creatures stepped into the story. The cave lion had to follow the food. Its hunting strategies shifted. It became a predator that understood many different kinds of land. The forests also offered shelter for the lions themselves. In the heat of summer or the heart of winter, the trees protected them from the extremes of temperature. Caves were often carved into hillsides where forests grew nearby. These dark spaces became resting places where lions could sleep and raise their young. The relationship between lion and forest was not only one of hunting and prey, it was also one of shelter and refuge. Yet the cave lion never became a creature of the deep woods. Its body was too large, its hunting style too direct. It belonged to the space where the world was wide. The forests were boundaries, not homes. The lions walked the edges, where the open land touched the trees. These borders were rich with life and opportunity. They offered prey that moved between safety and danger. The slow advance and retreat of the forests changed the world again and again. It shaped the paths of the lions and the migrations of the herds. It asked every creature to adapt or move on. The cave lion did not resist these changes. It followed the land with the same quiet confidence that carried it through the deepest winters. It learned to balance the open plains and the shadows beneath the trees. When we look back at the bones and fossils, at the markings left behind in stone and soil, we see evidence of a predator that understood the shifting landscape. It understood that the world was never still. The forests and plains were not enemies, they were partners in shaping life. The cave lion moved where the land allowed, and it hunted where the prey led. The edge of the forest was more than a border, it was a place where two worlds met and changed one another. The cave lion walked that line with ease, a giant shaped by the open plains, and yet always aware of the shadows beneath the trees. When we think of the ancient cave lion, it is easy to imagine a single powerful animal moving across a frozen world. But each lion began its life in a place far quieter than the snow-covered plains. Every giant predator began as a small cub, born into a world of cold winds and shifting seasons. The story of these cubs tells us much about how the cave lions lived, how they grew, and how they built their families. Scientists have uncovered delicate clues to these early lives. In some caves, fossil remains of very young lions have been found. Their bones are smaller and lighter, showing that they were not yet ready to hunt. These fossils reveal evidence of reproduction, of cubs born in protected places where they would have been kept safe from the harshest weather and the danger of other predators. The presence of young individuals in these caves suggests that the cave lion did not raise its young in the open plains. Instead, it chose shelter for the earliest stages of life. Dens for cave lions may have been found in deep caves, sheltered rock formations, or hidden hollows beneath cliffs. These places offered warmth and stillness. The darkness shielded the cubs from eyes that might seek them as prey. The lioness, strong and watchful, would have chosen a den close to food and water, yet far from danger. The shelter would become the beginning of the cub's journey. Inside the den, the lioness would spend the early weeks nursing her cubs. Just as modern lions do, she would clean them, guide them, and teach them the early senses needed to survive. The cub's bones show patterns of early growth, of limbs that gained strength through movement, and of teeth that formed in stages. These fossils often rest beside the remains of the mother or other adult lions. Their positions suggest parental care, not abandonment. The cubs were protected until they grew ready to step into the world. The presence of multiple cubs in the same site offers hints about social structure. Some researchers believe that cave lions lived in small family groups. Unlike some big cats that live alone, these lions may have shared food or defended territory together. The evidence is not always clear. The fossil record is a puzzle made from scattered pieces, but the clues point to social bonds, especially between mothers and their young. There are fossils where adult lions and cubs are found close together, suggesting they were resting or sheltering as a group. These arrangements are not random, they speak of connection. In some cases, the cubs appear to have died alongside their mother, possibly during harsh winters or sudden disasters. Fossil positions tell stories without words. They reveal the shape of life and family. The growth of a cub into a powerful hunter required time and learning. The cub would begin by exploring the den, testing its strength against tumbling siblings and growing sharp eyes for movement. As it grew older, it would follow the adults to the mouth of the cave and watch the world outside. The first steps across snow or grass would come cautiously. The lioness would guide them back to safety if danger appeared. Mortality among lion cubs was high. The fossil record shows many young lions who did not survive past their first or second year. The reasons were many. Harsh winters could steal warmth from their bodies. Hunger could weaken them. Predators and rival lions could find the den. The world demanded strength from the beginning. Yet those who survived grew into powerful hunters. Their bones grew thicker, their teeth sharpened, their muscles formed the strength needed to join the hunt. Some cubs likely lost their lives in the struggle for survival during glacial periods. When prey was scarce, the weakest might not receive enough food. The lioness had to balance her own needs with those of her young. The struggle was written into each generation. Cubs that survived carried the resilience of their parents. In this way, the lion's lineage continued across the shifting world. The way a cub grew mirrored the world around it. The cave lion's body changed with the seasons. As the cubs matured, they learned to navigate the forest edges and the open plains. They learned to listen for the movement of prey and the sound of other predators. They learned to follow the pride or family unit, watching and copying each movement. This early training prepared them for the reality of life in the Ice Age. Some fossils hold marks of play. Young lions may have wrestled, chased, and tested their strength against one another, much like lion cubs do today. These small details, captured in claw marks and scratches, show that their world also held moments of life and movement. The cubs learned through play, building the speed and skill that would one day make them hunters. The growth of a lion took years, from the first breath in the den to the first hunt on open ground. Each moment prepared the cub for the future. The social structure of the cave lions was built around care and teaching. The lions that survived grew into adults that carried memories of their early lessons. They became protectors and hunters, passing that knowledge forward. When we imagine cave lions at their strongest, It is easy to forget that they once began as small, vulnerable cubs in dark shelters. The fossils remind us that even the greatest predators start their lives with growth and learning. The story of the cave lion is not only the story of power, it is the story of care, of survival, and of a family shaped by the land they called home. As the world of the Ice Age shifted beneath wind and snow, the cave lion was never the only hunter moving across the frozen plains. Another predator walked beside it in the long story of ancient Europe. The cave hyena was shaped by the same world and driven by the same hunger. Where the lion carried strength and size, the hyena carried endurance and numbers. Their paths crossed again and again, not as rare encounters, but as constant negotiations for food, space, and survival. The cave hyena was not the same as the spotted hyena of today, although the two share ancestry. The Ice Age hyena was large and powerful, built for crushing bone. It lived in clans instead of the smaller family groups that lions may have formed. A single clan could grow large enough to match or even overpower a solitary lion or a small group of lions. These predators did not simply hunt alone, they hunted together, their movements coordinated by the cold and the presence of prey. The competition between cave lions and hyenas is written in the bones scattered across the archaeological record. Some bones of mammoths and bison hold the marks of both animals. Hyenas left deep grooves from powerful jaws. Lions left punctures from sharp teeth. These marks lie on the same carcasses, sometimes even on top of each other. They reveal a story of animals arriving at the same kill and fighting for the same meat. The freeze of winter did not allow waste. Every scrap mattered. The presence of both predators at a single site shows how closely their lives intertwined. There are places where the bones of cave lions and hyenas were found together in caves. These caves did not belong to one species alone. Some caves hold layers of occupation. One layer reveals hyena bones and gnawed remains. Another layer holds lion bones or the remains of prey that lions dragged inside. These layers switch back and forth, showing that the same shelter was used by different predators in different seasons. The caves became contested territories, much like the plains. They held warmth and protection. They held meaning for survival. The bite marks tell us more than simple conflict. They show how competition shaped behavior. Hyenas often scavenged from lion kills, arriving after the hunt was complete. Their jaws crushed bones to reach the marrow. Lions, in turn, sometimes returned to carcasses already stripped by hyenas to find what little remained. The snow preserved the remains, allowing both predators to return again and again. In some bones, the pattern of bite marks suggests a struggle. The lion may have defended its kill. The hyena may have refused to back away. These battles were not simple or one-sided. Each predator held different strengths. The hyena's ability to travel long distances as a clan gave it an advantage. The lion's power and size gave it another. The balance between them shifted with the seasons. In times of plenty, they may have tolerated each other more easily. There was enough food for both. In times of scarcity, the competition grew fierce. The traces of these moments lie in bones fractured by powerful jaws and in marks left by claws and teeth. Scientists study these marks carefully. Bite mark analysis reveals patterns that identify which predator arrived first. Hyena marks tend to be deeper, shaped by crushing force. Lion marks tend to be sharper, designed for tearing and puncturing. When both appear on the same bone, the pattern becomes a quiet conversation across time. It tells us who claimed the kill and who arrived after. It tells us who left the site in dominance or defeat. The spatial overlap between these species is clear not only in caves, but across the landscape. Fossil remains of both predators are found in the same river valleys and near the same plains. They followed the same herds and shared the same water sources. Their presence did not divide the world into separate territories. It created a shared world marked by tension. The cold shaped this tension into a constant presence. The competition did not always end in violence. Sometimes the hyenas waited until the lions were done. Sometimes the lions moved on, leaving the hyenas to finish the carcass. Each predator read the landscape and made decisions that suited its strength. The Ice Age did not allow wasteful battles. Most encounters were simple acts of survival. The bones left behind show the rhythm of these ancient negotiations. The story of cave lions and hyenas is not only about conflict, it is about the balance of two powerful species that walked the same land and adapted in different ways. The hyenas brought numbers and endurance. The lions brought size and strength. Together they shaped the world of the Ice Age, each influencing the other. Their competition left marks that still speak across the ages, preserved in stone and bone and in the memory of the land itself. In the silent world of the Ice Age, there were moments when the stillness of snow and wind was broken by sound. These were not sounds left behind in fossils or discovered in the quiet chambers of caves. They were the voices of the animals who lived in that ancient landscape. Among those voices, one call must have carried farther than most. It would have slipped across the plains, echoed along frozen rivers, and rolled over grasslands touched by winter. It belonged to the cave lion. We have no recording of the cave lion's voice. There are no echoes on stone to tell us the exact sound. Yet the clues left in their bodies allow scientists to reconstruct a possibility. The bones of the throat and the structure of the skull carry hints about the shape of their voices. In modern lions and tigers, deep throaty roars come from flexible bones in the larynx. These bones change the shape of the vocal tract and allow for a low, powerful sound. The cave lion shared some of these same physical traits. The fossils reveal that the throat of the cave lion was built for strong vocalization. The bones that supported the voice box were shaped in a way that suggests power and depth. When scientists examine these structures, they see similarities to modern big cats that are known for their loud calls. These are not high or delicate sounds. They are low, resonant, and able to travel great distances. If the cave lion could roar like a modern lion, its call would have sounded different on the Ice Age plains. Cold air carries sound more easily. On a quiet night, a roar could travel across miles of snow and open land. Early humans would have heard it from their shelters. Hyenas and wolves would have paused at the sound. The roar of the cave lion was not only a communication, it was a presence. It marked territory, warned rivals, and brought family groups back together. Scientists compare these ancient lions to modern big cats to understand how they might have communicated. Today, lions call to one another across wide distances. They use deep roars to claim space, to warn others, and to find companions. Tigers make softer but equally powerful vocalizations. They use growls, chuffs, and moans to speak to each other. The cave lion likely used a range of sounds. The exact notes have been lost to time, but the physical evidence suggests a voice of strength. The comparison does not end with roaring. Modern lions use body language as much as vocalization. They brush against each other in greeting. They use small sounds to reassure young cubs. Tigers communicate with their tails, ears, and eyes. The cave lion would have shared some of these instinctive behaviors. Social communication does not always require words. It flows through movement and touch. Even in silence, the cave lion's body could speak. There is evidence in the skull of the cave lion that suggests it had strong muscles around the jaw and throat. These muscles would have allowed for a range of vocal sounds. Perhaps its roar was deeper than the modern lion. Perhaps it was shaped by the cold air and the vast spaces of the Ice Age plains. The roar may have been used to locate other lions across the snow, to gather them before a hunt, or to warn intruders. These calls were not random, they carried meaning. Other sounds may have filled the daily life of the cave lion. There could have been the soft rumble of a mother reassuring her cubs, or the low growl of a lion facing a rival in the night. There could have been the nearly silent chuff of greeting, a breath of voice shared between companions. Just as modern lions do, the cave lion may have used these sounds to maintain bonds and guide movement. In a world where survival was shaped by cooperation and strength, communication was essential. Some scientists believe the cave lion's voice might have carried farther than the roar of modern lions. Its large skull and powerful chest suggest that it could have produced a sound that rolled across longer distances. This idea comes from the shape of the bones that supported the vocal cords. The structure could create lower frequencies that travel far through cold air. The Ice Age world was a vast space. The cave lion may have used its voice to cross that space. There is no way to hear the cave lion's call today, but we can imagine it, not as a sharp or sudden sound, but as a deep and resonant presence. The call may have blended with the wind or echoed through the valleys. It was a sound that belonged to the land and to the time. It connected one lion to another, marking their place in the world. When we think of communication, we often imagine words or complex language, but for the cave lion, communication was simpler and yet still powerful. It was a call into the night. It was a sound that traveled across the frozen plains. It was a voice shaped by the same cold that shaped its body and its life. The roar of the cave lion may be gone, but the memory of its presence remains written in the bones, in the land, and in the world it once ruled. The world of the cave lion was not bound to one region or one climate. It stretched across a vast shape of earth that continued far beyond the plains and permafrost of ancient Europe. The movement of these lions was not hurried or chaotic. It unfolded slowly, like the passing of glaciers or the shifting of seasons. Their journey across the land was guided by food, by climate, and by the slow rhythm of evolution. To understand the true reach of Panthera spelaea, we must imagine a continent far larger than Europe alone. During the Cold Ages, when the Ice Age settled deeply over the world, the land of Eurasia became connected in ways that no longer exist. As water froze into great sheets of ice, sea levels fell. The ocean floor rose into plains and bridges of earth. One of these land bridges stretched between Siberia and North America, a route now buried beneath the Bering Sea. Others formed across shallow seas within Europe and into Asia, linking distant regions into a single continuous landscape. The cave lions moved along these paths. Their range extended from the Atlantic coast of Europe to the plains of Siberia and into the edges of northern China. Fossils have been found in France and Germany, in the valleys of Russia, and in the frozen earth of Siberia. In some places, the bones appear in caves and sheltered hollows. In others, they lie in open ground, where ancient rivers once flowed. Their presence tells a story of travel across thousands of miles. The cave lion was not a creature of a single homeland. It belonged to the entire continent. The spread of the cave lion was shaped by the movement of prey and the changes of the land. When the climate warmed and the ice retreated, the plains opened. Herds of mammoths, bison, and horses could migrate farther. The lions followed. When the cold returned and the ice pressed south again, the lions adapted to narrower ranges. Their distribution shifted like the breath of the earth. The Ice Age world was constantly changing, and the cave lion moved with that change. The remarkable range of Panthera spelaea also tells us something about their resilience. These lions survived in landscapes that varied between tundra, grassland, and forest edges. They lived where the winters were long and the summers brief. Their ability to hunt across different environments gave them an advantage. The bones found in Siberia show animals that lived in even harsher climates than those in Europe. In some cases, their features show subtle differences, shaped by the places they called home. Scientists have studied the DNA of cave lions from across Eurasia. The genetic record shows patterns of divergence. Lions from Western Europe developed differences from those in Siberia. These differences grew slowly over thousands of years. The populations were not completely isolated, yet they became distinct as the climate shifted and the land changed. Ice Age rivers, mountains, and forests created natural boundaries. The lions adapted to different prey, different weather, and different hunting strategies. The genetic evidence reveals more than just separation, it shows movement. At certain times, lions from one region mixed with those from another. The DNA carries traces of migration, of individuals leaving one population to join another. The land bridges formed during glacial periods allowed these exchanges. During warmer periods, the sea rose and the bridges disappeared. Populations became isolated once more. This cycle repeated many times. With each cycle, the lions changed. In Siberia, some cave lions grew slightly larger and more robust. In Europe, the lions showed features adapted to the edges of forests as well as open plains. The variation was subtle, yet it shows that the cave lion was not one single animal, but many. It existed as a mosaic of populations that evolved with the land. The fossil record and the genetic evidence together reveal a story of slow divergence and repeated reunion. Their spread across Eurasia was not a single journey, but a continuous movement that lasted tens of thousands of years. It was shaped by the availability of prey and by the push and pull of climate. It was shaped by the rise and fall of ice, by the opening and closing of ancient land bridges. The cave lions did not conquer Eurasia. They flowed across it like a river. They adapted to the spaces they entered and the winds that guided them. Their movement across the continent also helps us understand how they interacted with humans and other predators. Different regions offered different challenges. In Europe, cave lions shared space with Neanderthals and early Homo sapiens. In Siberia, they faced colder temperatures and different patterns of prey, yet their presence remained constant. The lions did not fade from the story as they spread. They became part of the land, and the land became part of them. When we trace their range across Eurasia, we see a world connected by cold and by life. We see a continent shaped by ice and opened by land bridges. We see populations that diverged and reconnected. The cave lion's journey across this world is preserved in bones, in DNA, and in the memory of the earth itself. Their presence stretched from the forests of Western Europe to the frozen plains of Siberia, a testament to the strength and resilience of one of the Ice Age's greatest predators. As the story of the cave lion unfolded across the ancient world, it was shaped by a force greater than even the largest predator. The Ice Age was never still. It changed from bitter cold to brief warmth, then back again. The land rose and fell with ice and thaw. These shifts were slow and quiet, stretched across lifetimes and generations, yet they brought changes that even the cave lion could not always meet. When the world warmed, the great sheets of ice retreated, rivers swelled and overflowed into new paths. The plains that once stretched far into the horizon began to change shape. Forests crept outward, their roots finding soft ground where snow once lay. The open grasslands where the cave lion moved so easily began to shrink. The wide hunting grounds narrowed. The world became more crowded and more tangled. During these warming periods, the land felt different. Trees spread their branches across the plains. Valleys that once echoed with the sound of herds became quiet under the shade. The thick growth of the forest slowed the movement of the cave lion. The predator that was built for open spaces found itself in places where shadows grew deeper and the air carried the scent of leaves instead of frost. In the forest, hunting changed. The open fields allowed lions to watch prey from a distance. In the trees, vision became limited. Movement required caution. The lion had to adapt its strategies, but not every adaptation could happen quickly. The world in which the cave lion thrived was fading. The balance of power shifted toward animals that lived comfortably in dense forests. Deer, boar, and smaller herbivores found shelter among the trees. Mammoths, bison, and horses moved north or disappeared. The change in vegetation also changed the prey. Grasslands fed large herds, forests fed fewer animals. The prey that remained became harder to catch and easier to hide. As the forests grew, the herds that once sustained the cave lion began to collapse. Some species moved into colder regions, others dwindled in number. The Ice Age had been a world of giants, but as the climate warmed, many of those giants faded. The cave lion watched its world contract. This shift did not happen suddenly. It stretched across thousands of years, like the slow closing of a door. The cave lion adapted where it could, but every change in the land carried a cost. The cold had built the lion's body. The open plains had shaped its strength and its hunting strategies. When those plains shrank, the lion had to move farther to find food. It had to roam longer distances, crossing forests and mountains to follow the herds that remained. The collapse of prey populations proved one of the greatest challenges. Scientists study the bones of mammoths and bison to trace these losses. In some regions, the numbers dropped quickly. In others, they faded slowly with each generation. The reasons were many. Warmer temperatures changed the growth of vegetation. Rivers shifted their paths. Droughts touched the land. The conditions that once supported large animals could no longer sustain them. As the prey disappeared, the cave lion faced hunger. A predator of that size needed regular meals. Starvation could come quickly. The forests did not provide enough food for a giant hunter. The lion was caught between a land that was changing and a body shaped for a world that no longer existed. There is evidence in the fossils that survival grew more difficult. Some bones show thinner bodies, others hold marks of scavenging. Lions that once hunted fresh prey may have turned more often to carcasses. They may have followed smaller game or competed more fiercely with hyenas and wolves. The struggle for food grew sharper. Each warming period tightened the grip of scarcity. Climate change not only altered the land, it changed the rhythm of the seasons. Winters became shorter, summers lasted longer. The long cold spells that once supported the cave lion's hunting habits faded. The world became unpredictable. The lions moved with the seasons, but the seasons themselves changed. The forest expansion continued over thousands of years. The open plains became islands among the trees. The cave lion's hunting grounds became scattered and broken. Movement became more difficult. Resources became rare. In the deep past, the lion had survived the challenges of cold, yet the slow advance of warmth proved more complex. Even the great predator could not escape the shifting land. Its world began to shrink, not through sudden disaster, but through quiet change. The forests closed around the plains. The prey grew fewer. The land that had once sustained the cave lion changed into something new. The story of the cave lion is often told through images of strength and power, but strength alone was not enough to survive a changing world. The climate wrote a slow and patient ending to the age of giants. The cave lions adapted for a time. They traveled across the shrinking open spaces. They hunted in the shadows of new forests. They followed the herds that remained. Yet the land continued to change. The slow warming of the world shaped a future that no longer belonged to them. Long before the last cave lions vanished from Europe, another force began to shape their fate. It did not arrive suddenly. It did not sweep across the continent in a single moment. Instead, it grew slowly as one group of humans became many and the paths of people widened. As climates warmed and the forests spread, Homo sapiens moved deeper into the land once dominated by giants. Their presence began as small gatherings of families. They hunted in groups and used fire to shape their camps. They carried simple tools that improved over generations. Each change in the human story was subtle at first. The growth in population was slow but steady. The land that had once belonged to only a few now held many. Humans followed rivers and plains. They moved into valleys and across open fields. Their story unfolded alongside the lions, but along a very different path. The cave lion was a hunter shaped by the cold. Humans were shaped by adaptability. As their numbers grew, humans learned new ways to find food. They studied the habits of animals. They learned the patterns of migration and the signs of weather. They harvested plants and hunted prey with increasing skill. They used stone, bone, and wood to build tools. Over time, those tools became sharper, stronger, and more precise. These new hunting tools changed the balance of the landscape. Spears were crafted with careful thought. Some were designed for throwing, others were meant for close pursuit. As technology improved, humans could bring down large prey with greater efficiency. A single hunter became capable of striking from a distance. A group of hunters could coordinate, each person working with the others. The land no longer belonged only to the lion. Humans were claiming space for themselves. The expansion of human groups did not look like a battle at first. It began as shared hunting grounds, where humans and lions searched for the same herds. Mammoth, bison, and horse were valuable to both. The lion relied on strength and speed. Humans relied on planning and tools. At times their paths crossed peacefully, other times they crossed in conflict. Bones found in caves and open sites show the marks of struggle. Some prey bear both the deep cuts of human tools and the bite marks of predators. The competition for food grew sharper when the prey became scarce. Climate had already reduced the great herds. Humans and lions both needed more territory to survive. Humans traveled farther, building new settlements and exploring new routes. Their population increased as they shared knowledge across generations. Children learned hunting skills from adults. Families grew larger. Communities formed. The land began to change shape around these human settlements. For the cave lions, these changes were more than just a challenge. The world that had once been quiet and open became noisy with human activity. Fires burned through forests and grasslands. Paths were worn into the ground. The herds that once moved freely now faced pressure from two predators. The lions had to travel farther to find food. They were drawn toward human camps when prey was scarce. This brought them closer to danger. It is possible that the first encounters between cave lions and humans were brief, a shadow moving through the trees, a distant roar carried on the wind. But as humans spread, those encounters became more frequent. Evidence found in bones and tools tells a story of confrontation. A few skeletons bear the marks of lion teeth. These are rare, yet they show that humans could fall victim to the same predator that stalked mammoths and bison. The humans did not simply suffer these attacks, they learned to defend themselves. Fire became a shield, spears became weapons, people built shelters that kept them safe. The presence of humans was no longer passive, they shaped the land with intention. Step by step, they pushed deeper into the world of the lion. Human expansion also changed the structure of the prey populations. As more animals were hunted for food and resources, the herds had fewer chances to recover. Humans hunted not only for survival, but also for planning ahead. They stored meat, they dried hides. Over time, they took the strongest animals from the herds. This weakened the prey species and made survival harder for the lions. Both predators wanted the same animals. In many places, there was not enough for both to thrive. The cave lion had once stood at the top of the food chain. Now it shared that place with another hunter. The competition was not always direct. It played out in the shifts of prey distribution and the changes of the land. The world became divided between what humans claimed and what lions needed. The expansion of Homo sapiens into lion territory created a new landscape. It was a landscape where two powerful hunters moved across the same plains and the same forests, each one shaped by a different path of survival. As humans became more skilled and more numerous, the balance continued to shift. The land that once belonged to the lion was becoming a human world. The great predator still hunted. It still traveled across long distances. It still stood at the edge of forests and waited for prey. But the world around it no longer held the same silence. The presence of humans brought change. The expansion continued across generations. The struggle for space and food deepened, not through sudden conflict, but through the slow and steady spread of people across the ancient land. As the world continued to change and the forests pressed deeper across the land, the habitat of the cave lion began to shrink into smaller pieces. These predators, once rulers of a continent, did not vanish all at once. Their retreat was gradual. It unfolded across centuries and then across millennia, like long shadows stretching over the land at dusk. The last places where they lived became quiet pockets of the Ice Age that lingered after the warmer world returned. Some of the final strongholds of the cave lion were places where cold held on with a firm grip. High plateaus and northern plains stayed frozen longer than the rest of Europe. In these remote regions, the great herds still moved across open ground. The forests had not yet tightened their hold. These were the places where the lions found room to breathe. Siberia became one of the most important of these strongholds. Fossils found deep in the permafrost speak of lions that survived there when their western cousins were already gone. In some parts of Russia and Eastern Europe, the cave lions lived longer than in the western lands. The climate stayed colder, the plains were broader, the prey was still plentiful enough to support the giant predator. Scientists have discovered bones from the late Pleistocene, long after the warming had changed the landscape elsewhere. These remains show that the cave lion did not disappear from Europe in a single wave. It survived in isolated populations that clung to the conditions that once shaped the Ice Age world. These pockets of survival tell a story of adaptation and resilience. When the forests grew thick across Western Europe, the lions there faced greater challenges. But in the far north and east, the land remained familiar for a longer time. The cold winds still blew across open ground, the snow piled in broad drifts, the plains still echoed with the movement of prey. These conditions allowed the cave lion to endure for centuries after it had faded from other regions. The strongholds were scattered, yet they shared certain features. They were places where the Ice Age held on despite the warming. They were places where megafauna still roamed in herds. They were places where humans were fewer, or where the paths of early people had not yet reached. The survival of the cave lion in these regions shows the delicate balance between predator, prey, and landscape. It shows how the fate of a species can be tied to the smallest details of geography and climate. Evidence of isolated populations comes from the fossils and from the ancient DNA locked inside them. When scientists examine these remains, they find patterns of separation. Some lions from the northern regions show small differences from those in the west. These differences grew slowly, shaped by isolation. Each population followed its own path. The bones carry silent stories of animals that lived in the last remnants of the Ice Age. There are discoveries of cave lions preserved in ice, with fur still attached to the skin. They are found in places where the cold never completely let go. These remains tell us that the species lived into the late Pleistocene, long after the world began to change. In these final strongholds, the cave lion held on to its ancient ways. It hunted across the plains, followed the herds, and raised its cubs in a world that was gradually slipping away. The final moments of a species are rarely clear. Extinction often leaves no single mark. Instead, it leaves quiet signs. The fossils become fewer, the range becomes smaller, the traces of their presence fade from the landscape. The story of the cave lion ends in these small details. The last populations lived longer in the cold regions of the world. They endured while the forests spread elsewhere. They persisted while the climate shifted. As time passed, the isolated populations became smaller. The prey that once sustained them grew scarce. The world continued to warm. The forests grew closer, even in the north. The land bridges that once allowed movement across continents became submerged beneath rising seas. The lions that once moved across Eurasia found themselves trapped in shrinking habitats. Even so, the cave lions endured longer than many of the great mammals of the Ice Age. Their final strongholds were places where the old world still lived. They hunted on the plains and watched the skies just as their ancestors once had. Their story stretched deep into the late Pleistocene, while the forests and the humans crept closer. These last survivors were the final echoes of an ancient age. They lived in places where the cold still held its breath. They lived in the regions where the Ice Age world refused to let go. The strongholds were small and scattered, yet they carried the memory of the continent that the cave lions once ruled. Their story did not end in a single moment. It faded slowly as the land changed around them and the world moved forward into a new chapter. When we look back at the final chapters of the cave lion's story, it becomes clear that there was no single cause that ended their long reign. Their disappearance was not a sudden collapse, nor was it the result of one dramatic change. It was a slow convergence of forces. Each one on its own might have been survivable, but together they created a world that the cave lion could not fully adapt to. The extinction of this great predator unfolded quietly over time, shaped by climate, by hunger, and by the growing presence of humans. We have already seen how warming periods transformed the land. The great plains that once supported vast herds began to shrink. Forests gathered where grass once stretched in every direction. Rivers changed course, and lakes receded. With every cycle of warming and cooling, the world shifted beneath the cave lion's feet. The open spaces that had been their hunting grounds grew smaller. These vast cats were specialists of the Ice Age. They were built for snow, for distance, and for large prey. When the landscape changed, these strengths became harder to use. The collapse of prey compounded this growing problem. Mammoths, bison, and other giants had been the foundation of the cave lion's survival. As climate altered the land, these animals became fewer. Some moved farther north, others vanished entirely. The great herds broke apart like ice melting into streams. With fewer animals to hunt, the cave lions faced hunger more often. The pressure for food increased with every generation. Human presence added another layer of difficulty. Hunters spread across the same landscapes where lions still roamed. They took the same prey, they improved their tools, and their numbers grew. They built shelters and used fire not only to survive, but to claim space. The competition between humans and cave lions was not always direct, but it was constant. The balance of survival leaned toward the species that could change more quickly, and humans carried that ability with them. It might be tempting to imagine a moment when the last lion fell to a weapon or to hunger, But extinction rarely leaves clear endings. It is written in patterns, in the bones and DNA that remain. Scientists have traced the genetic history of cave lions. What they found reveals another layer to the story. As populations shrank and became isolated in their final strongholds, the flow of genes slowed. The lions in Siberia became more separate from those in Western Europe. The small populations left behind had less diversity. Over time, this reduced the strength of the species. Genetic bottlenecks occur when a species becomes limited to only a few individuals. The traits that helped them survive in the Ice Age began to narrow. New challenges required flexibility. Instead, the lions were shaped by the old environments. Their bodies and instincts were tied to a world that was fading. The ancient DNA preserves this slow decline. It shows the points where populations split, where numbers dropped, and where the diversity that once strengthened them began to diminish. The extinction timeline across Europe was uneven. In the western lands, where forests grew first and humans spread earlier, the cave lions disappeared sooner. Their bones become scarce in the archaeological record. The places where they once roamed show fewer traces of their presence. In Central Europe, the decline continued. The great predator still hunted for a time, but its territories were smaller. Its populations grew thinner. In the north and east, where the climate remained colder and the plains persisted, the cave lions lasted longer. Their story continued into the late Pleistocene, deeper into time than in many other places. The pattern is clear. As the world warmed, the lion's range shrank. As prey disappeared, hunger grew more frequent. As humans expanded, the lions lost ground. The final survivors lived in the last cold places, where remnants of the Ice Age still lingered. Even there, the pressures accumulated. The prey that supported them dwindled. The forests closed in. The world grew warmer still. The cave lion remained for as long as the land allowed. Then slowly they were gone. There is a quiet sadness in this ending, not because nature is cruel, but because life is fragile in the face of change. The cave lion survived longer than many of its fellow giants. It adapted for as long as it could. It moved across continents and hunted through storms and snow, yet the forces shaping the earth were greater than any predator. The combined weight of climate change, shrinking prey, competition with humans, and genetic loss was too heavy to endure forever. The story of extinction is not only about loss, it also reminds us how closely a species depends on the world that sustains it. The cave lion was woven into the fabric of the Ice Age. When that fabric unraveled, so did the life that belonged to it. Their story faded gently across generations and across landscapes that were being reshaped by time. The world that remained after their disappearance was no longer the world they ruled. It had become a different place, one that waited for new creatures to take their place in the long history of life on Earth. When the cave lions finally faded from the land, the world did not fall silent in a single moment. The change was almost invisible at first. It unfolded in small steps, the same quiet pace that marked their decline. Yet Europe was never the same again. The land that had once shaped itself around the presence of a giant predator slowly shifted into a different rhythm. The disappearance of the lions did not simply remove one more animal from the landscape. It altered the balance that had defined the Ice Age world. For thousands of years, the lion's presence forced the land into motion. Herds of mammoth and bison were shaped by the pressure of the predator. They moved in great arcs across the plains. They learned the paths that kept them safe. Grasslands grew because the herds kept the vegetation low. The lions shaped not only the animals they hunted, but the plants that grew and the space that opened across the land. When the predators vanished, the balance loosened. The land grew slowly into a new pattern. In some regions, the prey that once lived in fear of the lions grew more confident. Animals moved into places that had once been dangerous. In the absence of the great cats, the herds changed their behavior. Some became more stationary, others moved into forest edges where they had once avoided the threat of ambush. Over generations, this shift allowed certain plants to spread. Forests took root in valleys where the prey no longer grazed as often. Meadows that had been trimmed by the teeth of herbivores grew wilder. The whole landscape began to look different. At the same time, the loss of the cave lion created opportunities for other predators. Wolves grew more numerous in some regions. Their packs filled a space that had been held by a larger hunter. Hyenas and bears found new paths to food. Even humans were affected by this changing web of life. The land no longer demanded the same level of caution where lions once roamed. The camps built by humans no longer needed to guard against the approach of a silent predator. Families settled more permanently in places that had once been contested. The disappearance of the cave lion also shaped culture in ways that are hidden and subtle. People had lived alongside giants for so long that the presence of the predator became part of the human mind. Stories were shaped by the memory of danger. Art carried the image of the lion even after it was gone. The paintings on cave walls preserved a world that had passed. The people who drew those shapes on stone saw the fading of a creature that once ruled the plains. As the species vanished, new roles emerged. Humans became the dominant predator in many regions. Their hunting tools continued to improve. Their knowledge of the land grew deeper. Without the cave lion, the balance of power was simpler. The competition for prey no longer had two great predators. The struggle for survival changed shape. The humans spread farther, building settlements and traveling across the land. The absence of the lions softened the element of danger. It opened paths that had once been blocked. Yet the disappearance of the cave lion also brought a quieter change. The land lost a source of pressure and movement. The ecosystem that had developed during the Ice Age was built around the presence of predators and the large animals they hunted. When the lions vanished, that system shifted. Some species grew more abundant, others faded away. Forests spread more easily. The open plains that had once been shaped by the herds and the hunters became more broken, more fragmented. The world that formed after the lions was not better or worse, it was simply different. There is something delicate in this transformation. The lion had been a part of Europe's story for so long that its disappearance changed the character of the land. The Ice Age world, once filled with the constant interplay of predator and prey, slowly settled into a calmer rhythm. The great herds moved differently. The forests grew in new directions. The people who lived in this changing landscape adapted their lives to a continent that no longer held the shadow of the great cat. Human culture continued to carry the memory of the lost predator. The drawings remained on the walls of caves. The stories passed through generations. Even long after the lions were gone, their image lingered in the human imagination. They became symbols of a world that existed before cities and fields. They represented strength, danger, and the wildness of the past. The disappearance of the cave lion did not remove them from the human mind. It only moved them from the physical world into memory and legend. The ecological reshaping of Europe after the lions faded was a slow and intricate process. It touched every level of the environment. The land grew into its new form, shaped by the absence of the predator that had once guided its patterns. The rise of humans and the changes in prey created new balances. The story of Europe moved forward, built upon the foundation of a world that had once belonged to giants. The loss of the cave lion was not the end of the story, but the beginning of a new chapter. The land continued to change. The forests grew deeper. The prey moved differently. The humans spread across the continent. The echo of the lion remained in the memory of the world it left behind. Long after the cave lions vanished from the land, the memory of them remained hidden in the earth itself. For thousands of years, the traces of their existence were kept beneath layers of soil and ice. The world moved on while their bones rested in silence. They waited through seasons and ages, untouched by the footsteps of the generations that followed. The rediscovery of the cave lion did not begin with a single moment. It began with curiosity, with people who looked into dark places of the earth and wondered what stories might still rest there. Some of the first discoveries came from caves. These openings in the stone were once the homes of lions or the hunting grounds of other predators. When early scientists and explorers entered these caves, they found bones lying in the dust. The shapes of the skulls and the curve of the jaws told a story of a predator long gone. The deeper people explored, the more they found. The bones were scattered, yet each one was a piece of a puzzle. They gave a glimpse of a creature that had once moved across the land like a shadow. Cave excavations became gateways into the past. The walls of the caves held more than bones. They carried paintings that showed the image of the lion. People who lived thousands of years before had drawn the shape of the great cat with careful lines. They recorded details of the animal's body, the strength of its limbs, the shape of its head. These caves were places where the past remained preserved, as if the earth itself had kept a record for us to read when the time was right. In other regions, the remains of cave lions were found where the cold held on for longer. Siberia became one of the most important places for rediscovering the lions. The frozen ground protected their bones from decay. In some cases, the remains were preserved so well that fur and skin still clung to them. These discoveries were extraordinary. They told us that the lions had once walked across the very places where the snow now lay deep. The cold earth had become a vault, protecting the memory of the creature that once ruled the plains. Scientists used these frozen remains to study the animals in greater detail. They could see the thickness of the fur, the size of the body, and the strength of the limbs. The frozen ground held stories that had been locked away for thousands of years. These discoveries allowed us to see the cave lions not just as bones, but as living beings that left their mark on the world. As more fossils were uncovered, a clearer picture began to form. But it was not enough to simply find the bones. Scientists needed to know how old they were. Carbon dating became a key tool in this rediscovery. This method allowed researchers to measure the age of the remains by examining the small traces of carbon that remained in the bones. Through this technique, they could tell how long ago the lions lived and when their populations began to decline. Carbon dating revealed that some of the cave lion remains were far older than anyone had expected. They showed the pattern of extinction across Europe. They revealed the moments when the climate changed, when the prey disappeared, and when the lions retreated into their final strongholds. This knowledge allowed scientists to trace the shape of the lion's story across time. The bones became markers, each one telling a chapter of the past. The study of cave lions reached another turning point with the discovery of ancient DNA. This breakthrough opened a new window into the story of the species. Scientists could extract tiny fragments of genetic material from the bones and frozen remains. These fragments were damaged and degraded, yet they still carried information. They revealed the relationships between cave lions and other big cats. They showed how the populations were connected and how they changed over time. DNA sequencing allowed scientists to see the story written inside the cells of the animals. It confirmed that the cave lion was a separate species, shaped by the Ice Age. It revealed the genetic differences between the lions in Western Europe and those in Siberia. It helped us understand how the species adapted to different environments and how their numbers changed with the climate. The rediscovery of the cave lion was not just a scientific achievement, It was a reminder of how deeply the past is connected to the present. Each fossil, each painted line on a cave wall, and each fragment of DNA carried a whisper of the world that once existed. The story of the cave lion emerged from the earth piece by piece, as if the land was slowly giving back what it had held for so long. Through these discoveries, we learned not only about the lions themselves, but about the history of the land they once ruled. We learned about the forces that shaped their lives and about the changes that brought their story to an end. The fossils became windows into a world that had been forgotten. The rediscovery of the cave lion allowed us to step into that world once again, to see the ancient landscape through the eyes of the past. When we study a creature that has vanished from the world, we begin with silence. Bones lie in the ground without movement or shape. They remember every contour of the body that once held them, yet they cannot speak on their own. To bring the cave lion to life again, scientists had to learn how to read these bones. They had to understand the quiet language written in the curves of the skull and the length of the limbs. With patience and careful attention, they used the tools of science to rebuild what time had taken away. One of the first steps in this work is the study of bone-to-muscle structure. Every bone tells a story about the muscles that once connected to it. Large ridges and deep grooves show where powerful muscles attached. Wide spaces between joints tell of strength and movement. When researchers examine the skeleton of a cave lion, they see evidence of a body built for speed and power. The shoulder blades are broad and curved, a sign of strong front limbs. The spine is long and flexible, shaped to support a predator that could leap and strike with precision. By studying the places where muscles once anchored to the bone, scientists can begin to rebuild the shape of the animal. They create models that show where the muscles stretched and how thick they were. With this method, the cave lion begins to emerge as more than a skeleton. It becomes a creature with form and motion. These models show that the cave lion was larger than most modern lions. The muscles across the chest and legs would have been thick, able to bring down heavy prey. The curves of the bones show that it was designed for running across open land, for chasing and tackling animals that lived on the plains. Comparisons with modern cats help guide this reconstruction. The cave lion shared its lineage with the lions and tigers of today. By studying these living predators, scientists gain clues about the ancient cat. The skull of the cave lion resembles that of a modern lion, yet it was larger and more robust. The jawbones show space for strong muscles that once powered a powerful bite. The legs were long, more like those of a modern-day tiger. This combination suggests an animal that could move with speed and deliver tremendous force. These comparisons also help us understand the behavior of the cave lion. The way modern cats move and hunt gives insight into the ancient predator. The position of the eyes and the opening of the skull show that the cave lion had excellent vision. Its long limbs suggest that it could run with great power. The shape of the teeth tells us that it was a hunter, not a scavenger. In studying the cave lion, scientists see echoes of the animals we know today, yet they also see differences that mark it as a species shaped by the Ice Age. Fur reconstruction is another piece of this puzzle. When remains are found in Siberia, the cold preserves more than just bone. In some cases, fragments of fur have survived. These pieces show that the cave lion's coat was thick and suited to life in a cold climate. The fur was likely dense and long, with a color that blended into the snowy landscape. Scientists also look to the fur of related species for clues. The coats of modern lions, tigers, and other large cats offer insights into the patterns and textures that may have covered the cave lion's body. These comparisons are not only visual, they help us understand how the cave lion survived. A thick coat would have protected it from the cold. The color of the fur would have provided camouflage on the open plains. The patterns may have been subtle, designed to blend into the environment. The reconstructions suggest a creature that was not only powerful, but also adapted to its world in every detail. One of the most surprising sources of evidence comes from cave art. The paintings made by ancient humans give clues about the appearance of the cave lion. The artists who created these images lived at a time when the lions still roamed the land. They drew what they saw. Their lines show animals with strong bodies and distinctive shapes. In some paintings, the lions are shown without the large manes we see in modern male lions. These images support the idea that the cave lion had a shorter or absent mane, a sign of adaptation to the cold. The cave art is more than a record of appearance, it is a record of movement and behavior. The positions of the lions in the drawings show how they walked and hunted. The artist captured the posture and power of the animal. These images are valuable evidence, just as important as the bones and the DNA. They bridge the gap between science and memory. They bring us closer to the world of the cave lion. Through bone-to-muscle modeling, comparisons with living cats, and the study of fur from preserved remains, scientists have rebuilt the appearance of the cave lion. The cave art made by ancient hands gives the reconstruction life and detail. Piece by piece, a picture emerges. The cave lion becomes more than a skeleton in the earth. It becomes a creature with strength and presence, shaped by the land it once ruled. In this reconstruction, the past steps forward into the present. The cave lion returns as more than a memory. It becomes a living image in our minds, a reminder of the world that once was and the creatures that moved across it. When scientists and storytellers speak of the cave lion, there is a natural temptation to compare it to the great cats alive today. The modern lion and the tiger are the closest reminders we have of the Ice Age predator. They have familiar faces, powerful bodies, and the same quiet authority in the way they move. Yet the cave lion was not simply a larger version of the cats we know. It belonged to a world that no longer exists, shaped by cold and wide-open land. Understanding the similarities and differences helps us see the ancient cat more clearly. The first comparison is size. Modern lions are large animals. A male African lion can weigh several hundred pounds and stand tall at the shoulder. A Siberian tiger is even larger, often considered the biggest cat alive today. Yet when the bones of the cave lion are measured alongside these giants, the difference becomes clear. The cave lion stood taller and carried more muscle. The limbs were long and wide across the bone. The skull was broader, with a jaw that could close with extraordinary strength. The proportions reveal a predator that surpassed even the largest lions and tigers of today. The bite force of the cave lion can be imagined by studying the skull. The large openings for jaw muscles suggest a powerful grip. Modern lions can bring down large prey with the strength of their bite and the weight of their bodies. Tigers can crush bone and disable prey with a single strike. The cave lion combined these traits. It carried the force needed to tackle animals that were themselves giants. The width of its jaws and the shape of its teeth tell us that it could hold onto a struggling mammoth calf or drag a heavy bison to the ground. The muscles that once filled those spaces would have been thick and strong, built for survival in the Ice Age. Yet strength alone does not make a predator. The behavior of the cave lion also invites comparison. Modern big cats show remarkable intelligence and flexibility in how they hunt. Lions work together to surround and isolate prey. Tigers hunt alone with silence and patience. The cave lion may have borrowed from both strategies. The long legs and powerful build suggest an animal that could chase across great distances. The skull and teeth show it could kill with direct force. The landscape of the Ice Age did not favor hiding. It favored speed and coordination. Some scientists believe that cave lions hunted cooperatively, just as modern lions do. The evidence found on prey bones shows patterns that may reflect group hunts. Other clues suggest solitary hunts in regions where prey was more scattered. The similarities are not only physical, modern lions and tigers communicate through deep calls that carry across the land. Their roars signal territory and presence. The cave lion may have made similar sounds. The throat structure in the fossils resembles that of living big cats. The deep growl of a lion at dusk, or the rumble of a tiger in the forest, echo the ancient voice of their ancestor. These vocalizations are a reminder that the cave lion was part of the same lineage, shaped by the same forces of evolution. Yet the differences remain striking. The African lion lives in warmer climates where the grasslands hold herds of antelope and zebra. The Siberian tiger lives in cold forests where trees create shadows and prey moves quietly. The cave lion lived in a world where cold winds shaped the land. The prey was massive. The challenges were different. The long limbs of the cave lion show that it was built for distance and for running across open ground. Its body held the strength needed to face animals that were larger than any modern prey. The coat was likely thicker than that of modern lions and more adapted to snow than the dense fur of the tiger. Modern lions and tigers are territorial. They defend their ranges and use scent to mark the boundaries of their world. The cave lion likely did the same. The long distances it traveled across Eurasia suggest a creature that needed vast territory to find enough food. The competition between predators would have created a world where territory mattered. The marks left on cave walls show that the ancient cats were known to the people who saw them. The artists observed not only the body of the animal, but the posture and attitude. The images show a creature that held itself with the same proud bearing we see in the lions and tigers of today. In the behavior of modern cats, we find echoes of the cave lion. The silent stalk of the tiger reminds us of patience. The group hunt of the lion reminds us of cooperation. The cave lion may have moved between these strategies, shaped by the land and the prey. It hunted across a world where survival demanded strength and adaptability. The comparison does not diminish the modern big cats. It reveals the depth of their shared history. The cave lion was a relative of the lions and tigers we know. It was a branch of the same family, shaped by a different age. Its disappearance does not end the story. The living big cats carry the legacy forward. They are living reminders of an ancient lineage that once stretched across continents and shaped the land. Through these comparisons, the cave lion becomes more familiar and yet remains unique. It was part of a world larger and harsher than ours. It moved with a grace and strength that modern cats still hold. It lived where the cold shaped the land and the prey grew to incredible size. The cave lion stands beside its living relatives, not as a copy, but as a testament to the power of evolution and the resilience of predators that have walked beside us since the earliest chapters of human history. The cave lion has been gone for thousands of years, yet its presence continues to rest quietly in the human mind. Even though we will never stand face to face with one, the memory of the creature has never faded. It survives in stories, in paintings on stone, and in the quiet wonder that stirs when we imagine an ancient world filled with giant hunters. Something about the cave lion continues to reach across time and speak to us. To understand why, we must look beyond bones and fossils. We must look into the deep places of memory and imagination. For as long as humans have walked the earth, apex predators have shaped our thoughts and emotions. They remind us of vulnerability and strength. They are the living symbols of survival. When early humans looked across the plains and saw the shape of a lion moving toward them, they saw more than an animal. They saw a force of nature. The cave lion ruled the Ice Age landscape in the same way the modern lion rules the savanna. It was a hunter that commanded respect. It was strong, silent, and patient. Even today, large predators stir powerful thoughts. Modern lions and tigers carry a weight in our imagination. They represent fear and majesty at once. The cave lion carries that influence even further. It was larger than the cats we know. It lived in a world of giants. The psychological impact of such a creature lingers because it connects us to an ancient instinct. It awakens the memory of what it meant to share the world with something that could challenge us. Humans survived the Ice Age. Beside the cave lion, they walked the same ground. They hunted the same prey. They learned how to live with danger always nearby. That experience shaped the early human mind. Even after the lions vanished, the memory of them remained. It was carried from one generation to another. The cave art on the walls of ancient shelters is a record of that memory. The lines drawn in stone show how deeply the presence of the lions was felt. The artists were not imagining mythical creatures. They were recording what they saw and what they feared. These images became a bridge between the past and the present. They show that humans and lions shared a story. The danger and wonder of that relationship stayed with us. Long after the lions were gone, the memory of them continued to shape culture. In the myths of different lands, great cats appear as symbols of strength. In some stories, they are feared. In others, they are revered. They are the guardians of sacred places, the messengers of gods, the protectors of ancient kings. Though these stories do not always refer to the cave lion directly, they hold the echo of a time when humans lived alongside powerful predators. The ancient memory of giant cats appears in the myths of Northern Europe and in the tales carried across generations. Even when the species itself faded from the world, the idea of the great cat remained. It became a symbol of the wild and of the past. It represented the strength and mystery of nature. The fascination with the cave lion also comes from a desire to understand the world that once existed. We look at the fossils and imagine the creature running across the plains. We imagine the cold air, the sound of snow under heavy paws, the quiet breath of a predator watching its prey. This curiosity draws us toward the past. It reminds us that Earth has changed and that life has always adapted. The cave lion is a window into that change. It represents the idea that the world was once filled with creatures larger and more powerful than anything we see today. It carries the memory of the Ice Age, of the cold plains, and of the ancient herds. When we study the cave lion, we feel connected to a world that belonged to giants. We imagine a time before cities and roads, before iron and fire. We imagine a world shaped by nature alone. Even in the modern era, the cave lion speaks to us. Scientists find new bones and uncover ancient DNA. Artists recreate the shape of the animal through drawings and sculpture. Writers imagine the world where the lions lived. Each discovery reminds us that the past is not lost. It is simply waiting to be understood. The fascination remains because the cave lion was part of our story. It was part of the world that shaped our ancestors. It reminds us that survival has always been a shared journey. The ancient humans watched the lions from the shadows. They learned from them. They feared them. They respected them. The memory of the cave lion is more than a scientific curiosity. It is a reminder of the powerful bond between humans and the natural world. The fascination comes from the recognition that we are connected to a much older history. The presence of the cave lion continues to echo across time. It invites us to imagine, to remember, and to wonder about the land that came before us. There are moments in Earth's story that make us pause, moments when it becomes clear that the world we move through today is only one version of what this planet has been. Europe is quiet now. Forests grow where wind once traveled unbroken across frozen plains. Rivers flow through valleys shaped by time and stone. The animals we know today make their homes here, and life seems familiar and safe. Yet beneath that quiet surface lies another history, a history written during an age when Europe carried creatures that stretched the imagination. We have walked through that forgotten age together. We have seen how the land once held giants. We have watched great cats move across the steppes, seen firelight dance on cave walls, and imagined the breath of predators on icy air. These stories are not inventions, they are part of the earth itself. They are held in bones buried beneath soil, in fragments of DNA, and in the old memories passed through ancient hands. It is easy to think that the world has always looked as it does now. Cities have grown, forests have spread, and the landscape seems settled into its present shape. The past tells a different story. It reminds us that change is a constant companion. Europe once hosted animals larger and more powerful than anything living there today. Mammoths shook the ground beneath their heavy steps. Great herds of reindeer and horses roamed the open plains. Most powerful of all were the cave lions, the silent rulers of the cold world. Their absence has left a quiet space in the landscape. When we look across the fields and forests, we are seeing the world after the roar has faded. The grasslands have softened. The predators that once shaped the balance of life are gone. The silence they left behind is part of the story. It is the echo of their presence and the weight of their disappearance. The world changed when the cave lions vanished. It shifted into a new era, one where humans became the dominant shape in the landscape. Even though the cave lions are gone, something of them remains. Their bones lie sheltered in caves and frozen ground. Their images rest on stone walls, drawn by hands that saw them alive. Each fossil and each painting is a doorway. It lets us glimpse the world as it was, for just a moment. Fossils are more than rock. They are reminders that life was once different and more varied. They are the silent record of bodies that breathed, hunted, grew, and survived. When scientists lift a fragment of bone from the ground, they are holding time itself. The fossil carries the mark of a lion that once lived and moved through the ancient world. It is a connection between the present and the past. It gives us a chance to understand the animals that shaped the land long before humans built cities. These discoveries remind us that the earth remembers everything. It keeps the stories safe until we are ready to hear them again. There is beauty in those ancient ecosystems. They were fragile and powerful all at once. Life had to adapt to cold seasons and scarce food. Each animal depended on another. The cave lion depended on the herds that roamed the plains. The herds depended on the grasses that grew with the changing climate. And through every shift, the land changed shape. Some creatures endured, others disappeared. The balance of those ancient worlds rested on small and delicate edges. To think about that world is to understand how rare and precious such ecosystems are. They existed for only a span of time. They leave behind a message about strength and vulnerability. We see in their history how life can flourish and how easily it can fade. We see how the earth can produce giants only to reshape itself into something new. Even now, the memory of the cave lions invites us to look at the world more closely, to notice how landscapes change, to remember that the earth is always moving from one story into another. The ancient predators may be gone, but their presence still rests quietly in the hills and plains. It lingers in the fossils and in the stories carved into stone. Europe once held a world filled with animals beyond anything alive there today. Their footsteps are gone, but the earth still holds the memory of their passing. The silence they left behind is not empty. It holds the trace of strength, the shape of history, and the reminder that the world is always greater than what we see in this moment. The story of the cave lions may have ended long ago, but their world still touches ours through the soil, the stone, and the quiet imagination that keeps their memory alive.